Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome to Double Portion Inheritance Ministries. I'm Maria Merola Wold.
And I'm Gary Wold.
In accordance with 1 Corinthians 9, 7 through 14, after the Sabbath is over, we ask you to prayerfully consider a one-time or recurring donation to www.paypal.com/PayPalMe/DPI Ministries or www.venmo.com@Maria-Merola. You can also use the email address doubleportioninheritance@gmail.com. Okay, well, today's teaching is what is the Hegelian Dialectic? It is April 20th, 2024. This is the second teaching of the day. Okay, so following the tragic events of September the 11th in 2001, my paradigm concerning politics and our government began to change profoundly. It was during the following year of 2002 that I was given several prophetic dreams where Yahuwah showed me things that I had not been previously aware of. I was reminded of Ezekiel's visions in Ezekiel 8:12, where he was told, "Son of man, have you seen what the ancients of the house of Israel do in the dark? Every man in the chambers of his imagery, for they say, Yahuwah sees us not. Yahuwah has forsaken the earth." Well, we're seeing the same type of thing going on in American politics. I want to share with you what Yahuwah revealed to me during that year of 2002 and how it was confirmed to me when I did the research. We are going to learn about a strategy that the globalists and the Illuminati have been implementing into our political structure for well over 200 years. Their goal is to bring the entire world into a one-world dictatorship under the false Messiah that people call the Antichrist. This strategy is called the Hegelian Dialectic. This is a artist depiction of George Hegel. Okay. George Hegel is the one who presented this ideology. Now, it was around even before he was even born, but it was presented under different names. Okay. But he's the one that presented it in his construct, right? And it's on page 1950. It's The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. This is from 1959. It's page 144. The state has the supreme right against the individual, whose supreme duty is to be a member of the state. For the right of the world spirit is above all special privileges. This is author and historian William Shearer. He's quoting George Hegel in his book, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. So this ideology, which was presented by George Hegel, is diametrically opposed to the Constitution of the United States, which says that we, the people, have the right to govern ourselves, not the state as a totalitarian government. In 1847, the London Communist League, which was Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, used Hegel's theory of the dialectic to back up their economic theory of communism. Now, in the 21st century, Hegelian Marxism thinking affects our entire social and political structure. The Hegelian dialectic is a framework for guiding our thoughts and actions into conflicts that lead us to a predetermined solution. Okay, if we do not understand how the Hegelian dialectic shapes our perceptions of the world, then we do not know how we are helping to implement the vision. When we remain locked into dialectical thinking, we cannot see outside the box. Hegel's dialectic is the tool which manipulates us into a frenzied circular pattern of thought and action. Every time we fight for or defend against an ideology, we are playing a necessary role in Marx and Engels' grand design to advance humanity into a dictatorship of the proletariat. Okay? So the synthetic Hegelian solution to all these conflicts can't be introduced unless we all take a side that will advance the agenda. The Marxists' global agenda is moving along at breakneck speed. Now, I wrote this blog in 2008, okay? But think about how far we are now since I wrote this, okay? The only way to completely stop the privacy invasions, expanding domestic police powers and land grabs, convert actions and outright assaults on individual liberty is to step outside the dialectic. This releases us from the limitations of controlled and guided thought. When we understand what motivated Hegel, we can see his influence on all of our destinies. Hegelian conflicts steer every political arena on the planet, from the United Nations to the major American political parties, all the way down to local school boards and community councils. Dialogues and consensus building are primary tools of the dialectic, and terror and intimidation are also acceptable formats for obtaining the goal. Okay? So I'm not gonna read this whole blog because it's very lengthy, but I'm gonna skip around a little bit. Okay, so definitions. This is Merriam-Webster's definition. Dialectic, the Hegelian process of change in which a concept or its realization passes over into and is preserved and fulfilled by its opposite. Development through the stages of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis in accordance with the laws of dialectical materialism. Any systematic reasoning, exposition, or argument that juxtaposes opposed or contradictory ideas and usually seeks to resolve their conflict, the dialectical tension or opposition between two interacting forces or elements. Okay, dialectical materialism, the Marxist theory that maintains that material basis of a reality constantly changing in a dialectical process and the priority of matter over mind. So here's the Hegelian dialectic strategy. What is it? Well, to put it simply, it is a strategy where two seemingly opposing views are forged, and the people have to choose between the following: Republican versus Democrat, conservative versus liberal, Catholic versus Protestant, Jews versus Palestinians. Here's what the Hegelian dialectic looks like. Okay, agenda. The agenda is centralization of power. Okay. Thesis: manufactured terrorist threat. So they manufacture a threat. The antithesis is a repressive police state. Okay. So they invent a terrorist threat, which means they have to put you on lockdown or they have to, take some of your freedoms away. The synthesis, removal of freedoms, transfer of power from the many to the few.
It's important to understand that when we say they construct something or they come up with some idea, that doesn't mean that there's not actually some event that takes place. It means they've come up with the idea and they've somehow orchestrated this to happen. It doesn't mean that something doesn't really happen. It means it's orchestrated in a larger sense.
Yeah, just like 9/11. We know that the Twin Towers really fell, and we know that there was a missile that hit the Pentagon. Although they tried to make us believe it was an airplane, right? But they wanted us to think that the threat came from Muslim terrorists. And I'm not trying to say that, Islam is good or it's benign. It's not. But that's not the point. It was our own government that did this. And what was the reason? They had to create a problem that would lead to the Iraqi war. There had to be an excuse for us to go to war with Iraq because, from what I understand, our government found out that Saddam Hussein was trying to rebuild Nimrod's ancient kingdom of Babel, and that he found remains of Gilgamesh, which is really supposed to be Nimrod, right? That his body was preserved, mummified in this tomb, and that our government wanted access to that, and so they had to find an excuse to start a war and make it look like, oh, it was the Muslims who started the whole terrorist attack on America. Well, it was really our own government.
Now, some of these details have leaked out over time, but it wasn't a secret that Saddam Hussein was trying to reconstruct the city. In fact, there's videos out now where you can see some of the archaeology and some of the restoration of the city.
The Hegelian dialectic is a framework for guiding our thoughts and actions into conflicts that lead to a predetermined solution. I've already said this, right? The Hegelian dialectical formula, A is thesis versus B, which is antithesis. So the two opposites equal C, which is synthesis. Okay? For example, if A, my idea of freedom, conflicts with B, your idea of freedom, then C, neither of us can be free until everyone agrees to be a slave. Okay, choosing the lesser of two evils is still choosing evil. So at one time, I rationalized that voting for the lesser of two evils was necessary. Following the events of 9/11/2001, I became keenly aware that both sides were working for the same team and that we were all being played. In the summer of 2020, Yahuwah spoke to me and said, look up the meaning of the word vote. Okay, so this is what I found. Okay, the dictionary says to make a solemn declaration or affirmation by some sacred being or object as a deity or the Bible, to bind oneself by oaths. Okay, the word origin for vote, a solemn promise, to vow. We're told by our Messiah in Matthew 5:34, but I say unto you, swear not at all, neither by heaven, for it is Elohim's throne. We're not supposed to take an oath or swear to any entity. The only one we are to make an oath to is our Creator Yahuwah and our marriage partner. Okay, that's it. Okay. Now, this is another meme I made. The false light claims to be conservative and Christian, but secretly serves the devil. And then there's the obvious darkness, which admits that they are liberals, and they also serve the devil. Okay? So you got the Black Witch on the Wizard of Oz. I mean, you look at her and instantly you know she's evil, right? But then there's the White Witch. She worships the same devil, but she looks pretty, and she's dressed in sparkling clothes, and she looks nice and kind and sweet and benevolent. So the dark side is too obvious to deceive the elect. Nobody's going to be fooled by her. But the false light is able to deceive the elect by strong delusion. Okay? So this is the principle of the yin and the yang, which we're going to talk about. Okay? So here's an analogy I came up with. It's just an analogy. Okay? Pretend for a moment that you live in a housing development where the residents voted with the homeowners association to be allowed to paint the outside of their home any color that they desired. However, the association would only allow them to choose between two colors, black or white. On a certain day, the residents voted for their choice of paint color. One group of residents voted to allow the homes in the subdivision to be painted white, and the other group voted to have the homes painted black. When the votes were tallied, 49% of the residents voted for black paint, and 51% of the voters wanted white paint. The white paint won out by only 1%. Every year, the association, every 5 years, the association hired painting contractors to paint all the homes white. Those who had voted for black paint called for a new vote every 5 years, hoping the vote would change. The association was concerned that the cost of changing the color of the homes to either black or white every 5 years would be too expensive. So they devised a secret plan. Every 5 years, depending on how the vote turned out, they would add just a few drops of black paint to the white paint, or just a few drops of white paint to the black paint, until eventually all the homes would be painted gray. Okay. The ultimate goal would be to have enough black paint added to the white and enough white paint added to the black until both parties, the black and the white, will have reached a compromise of the same shade of gray paint. The residents had no idea that their paint color of choice was being slowly contaminated until one day all their homes were gray. But none of them cared at that point because they had all accepted the compromise. You see, if the change had taken place all at once, they would have risen up in protest. But because the change took place ever so gradually, they barely noticed. And by the time that they did notice, the subtle changes had already become accepted into their subconscious mind. Therefore, they did not revolt. Okay, this reminds me of the frog in the boiling pot. Many of us are familiar with this analogy that is often used when scientists made an observation. A frog that was placed in room temperature water in a beaker, but the water in the beaker was slowly heated up until it came to a boil. Hours later, the scientists returned to find the frog dead and boiling in the water. The frog never noticed because it acclimated itself to the subtle changes. Conversely, they followed up with another experiment where the frog was placed into a boiling beaker of water, but the frog reacted immediately and jumped out to save itself. Okay? You see, those who adhere to this moral relativism would think it's unfair for the white paint party to have their way just because the majority ruled. They rationalize that the black paint party should have the same equal rights with the white party, even though they are a minority. This is the problem with having no absolutes with regard to morality. Once a society goes down that slippery slope, right becomes wrong and wrong becomes right. Hence, the dialectic sounds fair at first glance, but it is designed to take away all of our rights until we are all the same and nobody is unique or different from the other. Okay, now I'm going to explain the yin and the yang. So the Democratic Party would be symbolic of the black side, the yin. Okay, in Revelation 13:11, it says, "And I beheld another beast," which is America. America is the eighth kingdom on earth, the final end time beast power, because America became a world superpower in 1945 after World War II under the Yalta Agreement at the Potsdam Conference. Okay, so it says, "I beheld another beast," which is America, "coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns." The two horns represent the two-party system, Democrat and Republican. like a lamb, in other words, like a Christian nation, espousing to follow the principles of the Bible and Christianity, but he speaks as a dragon, okay? In other words, mystery school religions, Freemasonry, Roman Catholicism. The dark side of the Luciferian religion is what the Democratic Party is presenting. America is the two-horned beast of Revelation 13:11 through 12, contaminating the one true faith of our Messiah with Luciferianism, Mystery Babylon religion. And now let's look at the Yang, the Republican Party. Revelation 13:12 says, and he, meaning America, exercises all the power of the first beast before him, which is Rome. Remember, during Hitler's Nazi war in Europe, he was commissioned by Pope Pius. They both signed the Reichsconcordat Act in 1933, and Mussolini, Hitler, and Pope Pius were behind the Nazi regime, the Third Reich. And they conquered 10 European nations. So he, meaning America, exercises all the power of the first beast before him, Rome, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. So the first beast, which is the Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire of Europe, was healed after Mussolini signed this treaty called the Lateran Treaty in 1929, which gave the papal system back its sovereignty. Remember, Napoleon took down the sovereignty of the papal system in 1798. So the beast power suffered a deadly wound in 1798 under Napoleon, but in 1929, Mussolini healed the deadly wound. And in fact, all the newspapers around the world published the headlines. On the headlines, it said, deadly wound of the papacy now healed after many years. So the light side of Luciferian religion is what the Republican Party is presenting. When the black and the white are fully blended, it forms the color gray. This is the goal of the Vatican, to unite all religions under the papacy. Now, right now, Pope Francis is displaying himself as a hardcore liberal. He's saying that we should accept, same-sex marriages and that priests should be allowed to bless same-sex unions. Okay, so a lot of Catholics don't like Pope Francis because he's deviating from the conservative views and morals of most Roman Catholics, right? And so I know that Pope Francis is definitely a false prophet, no question about it. But I believe that he's going to be taken out of the way, and there's going to be another one that's going to step into his position as a conservative Catholic that's going to pretend to be on the side of the Bible, but only long enough to gather his constituents to him, and then he's going to pull a bait and switch, and his true colors are going to show, okay? And I believe that person could be President Trump, okay? So we'll talk about that some more, okay? So in a nutshell, the Chinese yin-yang symbols represent perfect balance. Seemingly, the whole of the Chinese philosophy stems from the concept of the yin and the yang. These are opposites interacting and supposedly the seed of all things. For example, evil results from an imbalance in yin and yang, while supposedly good comes from the two being in harmonic balance. So the meaning of characters for yin and yang has more than just one connotation. Basically interpreted, yang means sunny, so it corresponds to the day and more active functions, whereas yin means shady and corresponds to night and less active functions. So the yin-yang philosophy attempts to imitate the true creator of of the Bible, the true nature of our Creator by combining a paradox or a dichotomy into one concept. However, the philosophy behind the yin and the yang ultimately corrupts the good with evil. Okay, remember what the prophet Yeshayahu, Isaiah said. He says, woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. So this is what the tree of knowledge of good and evil was all about. The devil tempted Eve by using perverted logic. He caused her to doubt the goodness of our Creator by suggesting that eating of the forbidden fruit would make her wise. Now, it's not that Yahuwah wants to keep us from knowledge, it's that the tree of knowledge of good and evil together is a compromise, whereby we must tolerate some evil in order to have some good. The Hebrew word for adultery means to make impure by mixture. See, we are commanded in Ezekiel 44:23. He says, and they shall teach my people the difference between the holy and the profane, and cause them to know the difference between the clean and the unclean. This is what the Roman Emperor Constantine did in the 4th century. He outlawed Passover under penalty of death, which we are commanded to keep forever in remembrance of our Messiah, Luke 22:19. Instead, he instituted a new Roman holiday called Easter, or Ishtar, who was a pagan fertility goddess from ancient Babylon. Okay, so our Messiah said he would rather that we be either hot or cold. He said, if you're lukewarm, which is the same thing as having mixture, right? When you mix good and evil together, he says, this is being lukewarm. It's compromising. He says, I know your works, that you are neither cold nor hot. I would that you were cold or hot. He says in Revelation 3:16, so then, because you are lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will spew. That means vomit. I will vomit you out of my mouth. So Yahuwah hates mixture, unrighteous mixture. Okay. So at first glance, to the secular humanist mindset, arriving at a compromise with both good and evil mixed together sounds like a good thing. However, this was precisely the same sin that the serpent convinced Eve to partake of. Okay. We are told in Deuteronomy 5:32, you shall not turn aside to the right hand or to the left. He wants us to stay centered. Now, this is the dinner that they traditionally have every year, you know, before the election, okay, where the bishop, in New York, Roman Catholic bishop hosts a dinner, and he brings the left and the right candidate together. Okay. So what this picture is telling us is Rome owns both candidates. Okay. Most people would never put this together, but they're shaking hands and they're acting like they're all friends. They're wearing black and white, the Hegelian dialectic, the yin and the yang. The bishop of Rome is wearing red, which stands for blood sacrifices that are needed to combine the yin and the yang. Okay. And so the same type of photo was taken in 2012 with Mitt Romney and Obama. Okay. You see, both candidates are the bishops in the middle. In other words, I'm the one that's bringing the Hegelian dialectic together. Okay.
He's brokering the deal.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to skip over some of this because it's a very lengthy blog. I just want to get to the pertinent parts, okay? So the same strategy is in the Luciferian you can't really see it because it's kind of blurry, but it's Solve et Coagula tattooed on the arms of Baphomet. In Latin, it means solution and coagulation. Okay. Um, the philosopher's stone is a mythical substance that is supposed to change any metal into gold or silver, and according to occult folklore, to cure all diseases and prolong life indefinitely. Its discovery was the supreme object of alchemy. The ancient study of alchemy is concerned with making the philosopher's stone, a legendary substance with astonishing powers. The stone will transform any metal into pure gold. It also produces the elixir of life, which will make the drinker immortal. Okay, so this is the devil trying to counterfeit the true stone, which is the stone that the builders rejected, which is Messiah. But the devil's always trying to counterfeit. Okay. So let me skip over a little bit here. So here is Mel Gibson, who pretends to care about the child sacrifices and trafficking and child trafficking and all of that. He's staunchly Roman Catholic. He's the one who produced and what's the name of that film called the why can't
Passion of the Christ.
Yeah, the Passion of the Christ. And, he even admitted in interviews that he consulted the Jesuits to make this film, right?
What's also interesting is how in his earlier in his career, he's blatantly anti-Semitic, and yet that's all forgotten about after sort of a timeout.
Yeah.
How short the memory is of people.
Right. So you see him doing the two fingers just like Baphomet does. And I'll explain to you what those two fingers represent. Okay. Okay. So here's what Baphomet has on his arm. Solve et coagula. Okay. It's solution and coagulation. Okay. So it's like we create the problem, which is the solution. And then we bring the two opposites together, which is coagulation. Okay. This is their strategy for order out of chaos. Okay. When people get tired of moral decay, they get tired of wars, humanly engineered natural disasters. They get tired of, the declining economy, starvation, inflation, an increase in crime. The world will then be ripe for the counterfeit second coming of Messiah. Then the Jesuits in the Vatican, aka the Illuminati, will be able to seize full control of the hearts and minds of those who bow down to worship the beast.
It's kind of funny. It's a lot like a nagging child.
Mm-hmm.
Or, in scripture talks about the nagging wife, right? That constant drip of water. It's only a drip of water. It's only a nagging child. Yet it will drive parents crazy.
Yeah.
It will drive a spouse crazy. So they're creating all these problems, whether it's weather disasters, whether it's, climate change, or whether it's wars, or whether it's left versus right.
Mm-hmm.
They're going back and forth and wearing people out until it gets into a frenzy. And finally, people just want it to end. They just put a stop. Just make it stop.
Right.
They'll compromise in almost any way for what appears to be relief.
Right, exactly.
Which is the whole point.
Totally. Yeah. So, in this blog, I go into the history of the Illuminati. It was, in the 1500s, Pope Innocent III hired a Spaniard named Ignatius Loyola to start an order of Catholic priests who were trained to be espionage spies. Their goal was to destroy the Protestant Reformation. De Loyola gave them the nickname Illuminati, which in Latin means the enlightened ones, because they believe that Lucifer is the true God, right? They believe, in Isaiah 14:12, when it says, how are you fallen from heaven, oh Halel, the Hebrew word is Halel. The Latin is Lucifer, son of the morning. That means he was a created being. Yahushua created him. He was a fallen angel. And Yahushua said, I saw Satan fall from heaven as lightning. So we know that Lucifer and Satan are the same character. Okay? But some versions will say morning star. And it doesn't say morning star in Hebrew. Yahushua is the bright and morning star. In the book of Revelation 22, he says, I am the bright and morning star. But see, they would have you believe that Messiah Yahushua was reincarnated, that Lucifer fell from heaven and he came to earth as Jesus. So what they are presenting to you is a false Jesus, a false Messiah. They want you to think that Jesus, quote unquote, Jesus is a reincarnation of Lucifer. Okay. And they teach that he had to die on the cross. And not only did he take the sins of the world when he died on the cross, but he had to suffer in hell. Well, scripture never says he went to hell. It says he went to the lower parts of the earth to preach the good news to those who were in Abraham's bosom.
And he had the keys, right?
Right.
So I guess he was overpowered while he was down there?
But they lie and teach that that when he said it is finished, they say it wasn't finished, that he wasn't done atoning for his own crimes, that he had to go to hell and suffer there as a sinner and pay for his own crimes. So they say that when he resurrected, he was rehabilitated. And now they say that when Yahushua ascended back to the Father in heaven, that he's now on the throne as Lucifer, that now he's on the throne again as Lucifer. So even though they say Jesus Christ and Jesus this and Jesus that, they're really talking about a different Messiah, which is Lucifer. They believe that Jesus is Lucifer reincarnated. Okay? So most people don't know this. So when they hear someone say Jesus Christ, they automatically think, oh, he's a good guy. See, he's talking about Jesus Christ. He's a good guy. See? No. When they say Jesus Christ, they mean Lucifer.
They come up with their own definitions so that they can speak openly amongst everyone, and it looks fine. But to a fellow brother, in their faith, in their wickedness, they know exactly what they mean.
So the papacy is the Antichrist system. From the Vatican, you have the Jesuits. And then from there came the Illuminati, the Council on Foreign Relations, international bankers. We're talking the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers. Then there's the Mafia, which is the criminal arm of the Vatican. And then underneath that is the Club of Rome, the Opus Dei, the Freemasons, and the New Age movement. Okay. So it all roads lead back to Rome. Okay. They all lead back to Rome. Now, I've read this book in the past, The Secret History of the Jesuits by Edmund Paris. I'm not going to get into that. This blog is really long, but I'm just kind of skipping over some things. And then of course there's the Bilderbergs. They're the ones that determine who's going to be the president of the United States. Your vote does not count. Okay. Stop engaging yourself in the Hegelian dialectic. Okay. So Daniel Estulin, author of The True History Story of the Bilderberg Group, contends people should care because the idea behind each and every Bilderberg meeting is to create what they themselves call the aristocracy of purpose between European and North American elites on the best way to manage the planet. Okay. So his book, called The True Story of the Bilderberg Group, was published in 2005 and is now updated in a 2009 edition. He states that in 1954, the most powerful men in the world met for the first time in Oosterbeek, Netherlands, debated the future of the world, and decided to meet annually in secret. They called themselves the Bilderberg Group, with a membership representing a who's who of world power elites, mostly from America, Canada, and Western Europe, with familiar names like David Rockefeller, Henry Kissinger, Bill Clinton, Gordon Brown, Angela Merkel, Alan Greenspan, Ben Bernanke, Larry Summers, Tim Geithner, Lloyd Blankfein, George Soros, Donald Rumsfeld, Rupert Murdoch, other heads of state, influential senators, congressmen, and parliamentarians, Pentagon and NATO, brass members of European royalty, selected media figures, and invited others, some quietly by some accounts like Barack Obama and many of his top officials. Always well represented are top figures from the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, IMF, World Bank, Trilateral Commission, EU, European Union, and powerful central bankers from the Federal Reserve, the ECB's Jean-Claude Trichet, Bank of England's Mervyn King. Whatever its early mission, the Bilderberg Group is now a shadow world government threatening to take away our right to direct our own destinies by creating a disturbing reality, very much harming the public's welfare. In short, Bilderbergs want to supplant individual nation-state sovereignty with an all-powerful global government, corporate-controlled and checkmated by militarized enforcement. Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton, for example, who attended in 1991, this is what he said. There, David Rockefeller told him why the North American Free Trade Agreement was a Bilderberg priority and that the group needed him to support it. The next year, Clinton was elected president, and on January 1st, 1994, NAFTA took effect. Okay, so here's the objectives of the Bilderberg Group. Okay, this is their wish list. Okay, the group's grand design is for a one world government. In other words, a one world company with a single global marketplace, policed by one world army and financially regulated by one world central bank using one global currency. That's the mark of the beast. It's going to be used to buy or sell. Okay. This is their wish list. One international identify observing one of the universal values. Centralized control of world population by mind control. In other words, controlling world public opinions. This is why they're pushing the whole idea of transgenderism, because then people won't be procreating as much as they would if they, married opposite sex partner. Okay. New World Order with no middle class, only rulers and serfs, and of course, no democracy. A zero growth society without prosperity or progress, only greater wealth and power for the rulers. Manufactured crises and perpetual wars. Absolute control of education to program the public mind and train those chosen for various roles. Centralized control of all foreign and domestic policies. In other words, a one-size-fits-all globally. Using the UN, the United Nations, as a de facto world government, imposing a UN tax on world citizens. Expanding NAFTA and WTO, okay? Making NATO a world military. Imposing a universal legal system and a global welfare state where obedient slaves will be rewarded and nonconformists targeted for extermination. So, from its beginnings, the CFR, called the Council on Foreign Relations, has been committed to a one world government based on a centralized global financing system. Now, this is the logo for the Council on Foreign Relations. It's a naked man riding a white horse. And this word, ubique, is Latin. It means everywhere. We are everywhere at once. That's really what it means, everywhere. Okay?
Well, that's
Ubiquitous.
just a little bit creepy.
Like, when we hear the word ubiquitous means that something is everywhere at once. That's what this word is in Latin, ubique. Okay. They use the V to make the U sounds, right? So, and I know I've told many of you this, many of you have heard it, and many of you have not heard it, but on March 21st, 2020, Yahuwah spoke to me and said that Trump is the rider on the white horse from Revelation 6:2, who goes forth conquering, that he will be given a crown, which is the Latin word corona, and a bow, which in Greek is toxon. And I looked up the meaning, and it means a poisonous bow and arrow. Okay, Trump is the same one who told us in plain sight that he is the snake who would give the woman a deadly bite that would kill her. Stay with me, okay? Because I know some of you are already maybe, pushing back, but just stay with me. You'll see all the evidence. This is the blog I wrote called President Trump's poem about the snake and the woman. Trump declared that he is the father of these DNA altering shots. He even called them a great Christmas miracle on December 21st, 2020. This was on the winter solstice when infants have been traditionally sacrificed to Moloch. Now, look at this, and you'll see the fulfillment in this graphic I made. Trump is the rider on the white horse who is given a crown and poisonous bow and arrows. Okay. Now look at this. This was on July 10th, 2023. The Israel Heritage Foundation gave Trump the crown of Jerusalem. It was awarded to him. Okay. And we are told in Revelation 6:2 that the rider on the white horse is given a crown and a bow. Well, I looked up the meaning of this word bow. This is the word history. The Greek word toxon in Revelation 6:2 means bow or arrow. From this came the Greek toxikon, meaning a poison in which arrows are dipped. Toxikon was borrowed into Latin as toxicum, which gave rise to the Latin verb intoxicare, or to poison. And I noticed that this device that's going to be used to implant a chip so that we can buy or sell, people will not be able to buy or sell without it, looks eerily similar to one of these. Okay. And it's no accident that in November 2023, I believe, or might have been 2022, I can't remember which, but Trump placed himself on one of his NFT cards riding a white horse. Okay. So yeah, this is
That's to draw a connection with the Lone Ranger. The Lone Ranger was one hero that could save everyone. Right. So there he is, one hero.
And also connecting him to the the rider on the white horse on the Council on Foreign Relations. Now, we know that one of the ingredients in his snake bites are, I'm not going to say the word. Okay. So in November of 2023, Trump created NFT cards featuring himself as the rider on the white horse. Also in July of 2023, as I've already said, the crown of Jerusalem was given to him by the Israel Heritage Foundation. Trump is also genetically related to the Assyrians on his father's side, whom the prophet Isaiah prophesied about. Okay. And I believe that whenever Isaiah was talking about the Assyrian, he was talking about Nimrod. Nimrod was like an archetype. Okay. That same spirit of Nimrod is going to be repeated in Trump. Nimrod was a tower. He was a builder. He built the Tower of Babel. Trump is a builder of towers. He's got I don't know how many towers all over the world with his name on it. Trump Towers. I think there's like about 100 and something Trump Towers all over the world. Okay. Also, Trump's mother, okay, she's from the tribe of Dan. Now, we are told in Genesis 49, 16 through 17, that Yahuwah uses Dan to judge the people. See, Dan is also called a two-horned serpent. And I looked up this word in Hebrew. It's an adder or a sarastes. This creature it's like a serpent with two horns on his head. And it says that he bites the horse's heels and causes the rider to fall backwards. Okay, so that must mean that Trump's probably going to sabotage himself because he's the rider on the white horse. But if he's also the serpent that bites the horse's heels, he's going to be the cause of his own downfall, right? So here we have Nikolai Carpathia. He's the character that we saw in the Left Behind movies. He's holding up a syringe with a green serum in it. Look at how similar he looks to a young Donald Trump. Very similar, right? He was called the Antichrist leader in this movie in the Left Behind World at War. Okay, shows off his deadly green poison that will kill billions of souls on earth. Genesis 49:17 says, Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder, a two-horned serpent in the path that bites the horse heels so that his rider shall fall backwards. Now, this is a quote. It's a new study that was published in the Journal of Clinical Investigation has identified a snake venom related enzyme that may be the key cause of related mortality. And these right here, okay, I'm not using the word, but you know what I'm talking about. Okay, Donald Trump's mother, Mary McLeod, was a Scottish Jew from the tribe of Dan. Trump's poem about the snake that gave a woman a deadly bite. He says, "Oh, shut up, silly woman. You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in." Okay, so all the clues are there. Anybody who refuses to open their eyes and see what's really going on, they shall be willingly ignorant. Okay, willingly ignorant. Now, if you want to see more, Gary and I have published all the videos we've ever done about Trump and who he really is at this Trump Vimeo playlist. The link is right here. Okay. Also, we've got another playlist on YouTube. We've got another one on Rumble, which I haven't published here yet. So in 1985, Bob Gale admitted in an interview that he created the character of Biff Tannen in Back to the Future to represent Donald Trump. When Biff, aka Trump, tricks George, who is actually Biden, he calls him an Irish bug. Okay, well, Biden is Irish. He tells him to look down at his shoes, which, what about the shoes? Why does he say your shoelace is untied? Well, because the left and the right paradigm. Biden is Irish. He's the Irish bug that Biff or Trump slaps in the face. While everyone is so busy looking at the two-party system, in other words, the lesser of two evils, the globalists are playing a trick on you. Okay? The Back to the Future creators who were working on this film, they started a guild called the Hollywood Zionist Cinema Project. They were all, and still are, Israeli intelligence Mossad, along with Jeffrey Epstein, who is probably still alive, Ghislaine Maxwell, Bill Gates, Steven Spielberg, Bob Gale, and Robert Zemeckis. They use film to tell the elites what their plans are. You see, they're all in this together. And it was also explained in the film called The Da Vinci Code, starring Tom Hanks. At the 3-minute and 28 mark of this YouTube video, you will see in the Back to the Future film where Biff Tannen says to George McFly, "Look, your shoe's untied." Okay, now here it is. Okay, Biff is wearing red, for the Republican Party. You'll notice George is wearing gray. Gray is the ultimate goal of the Hegelian dialectic, the mixture of black and white, right? Marty's wearing red and blue because that's the compromise, right? Okay, both parties coming together. So when George McFly looks down at his shoes, which is the left-right paradigm, Biff smacks him in the face and says, "Don't be so gullible, McFly." You see, the left foot and the right foot is what Biff wanted George McFly to focus on. And while he effectively had him looking at the left-right paradigm, which is the Hegelian dialectic, he missed the real attack that was coming. This is why people say to me, "Why don't you talk about Biden? Or why don't you talk about all the evil stuff that Biden's doing?" Because Biden is George McFly. He's the stooge. He's not the big threat. He's the stooge. This is the threat. Biff Tannen. Okay? While everybody's busy looking down at their shoes, oh, the left and the right. Oh, the lesser of two evils. They're so busy, caught up in the Hegelian dialectic, that when Biff, administers a huge slap, everyone's going to be what? Like, what? You mean he's a dictator? What? I thought he was going to make America great again. I thought he was going to set us free from all of this tyranny from the left. No, no, no. Don't be that gullible.
I'll bring you great prosperity with some very reasonable compromises. It's reasonable, but look what you're going to get in return.
Exactly. Okay, so Marty McFly, like I said, was wearing both blue and red, which is the coming of both parties together, the new republic, which will make America into a Roman Catholic nation. Now, this is important. I didn't put it in the blog. I probably should have, but it, didn't occur to me until now. But this guy named Kim Clement, a lot of Christians think he was a true prophet of Yah, right? But here's how I knew Kim Clement was a false prophet. Back in 2002, somebody that I used to go to church with said, "Oh, go check out Kim Clement's website." So I did, and I looked at the Q&A section where people were asking him questions. And somebody said to him, "Well, what do you think of the second coming of Christ?" And Kim Clement said, "I'm not looking for the second coming of Christ. I'm looking for his many different appearances." Okay, so when he said that, I said, "Oh, wow, this guy's like a new ager." Okay. And look at what our Messiah said in Matthew 24. I mean, this is how he told us that we could identify a false prophet. He said, "For many shall come in my name, saying that I am Christ." In other words, they'll say, yes, Jesus is the Christ. Yahushua is the Mashiach, right? "And shall deceive many." So just because they say Jesus is the Christ, they can still deceive you, right? And then he goes on and he says, "And many false prophets shall arise and shall deceive many," right? And then what does he say when he says, here's what he says. He says, "Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not." Here, Messiah's over here. He's over there. He's going to appear on the stage at Benny Hinn's concert or Benny Hinn's, crusade. And, oh, he's over there.
He's on a preaching series in South America.
Right. He says, "For there shall arise false messiahs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if possible," and that word possible actually is the word powerful, dunatos, "if powerful, they shall deceive the very elect."
So let's digest that. It doesn't say if it were possible, as if it's not.
Yeah, "it were" is italicized. It
Right.
says words weren't there.
So if powerful. So do we not think Hasatan is powerful?
Right,
He's more powerful than our flesh and blood.
right.
So the question is not misunderstood all these years where, well, if it was strong enough, it might happen. But thank Yahuwah, he's not going to let it. That's not what it says.
Yeah.
It's saying it will be powerful. And when that powerful delusion comes, you'll be fooled.
Exactly. He says, behold, I have told you before, wherefore if they shall say unto you, behold, he's in the desert, go not forth. Behold is in the secret chambers, right? Like, in other words, he's not coming back to earth in this secret mystery appearance. Okay. Now, some people might say, oh, but Maria, you believe in a secret harpazo, but he's not touching his foot on the earth. He's only snatching his bride to heaven. He's not touching his foot on the earth. Okay. If someone tries to say he's here, he's over there, then we're not to believe it. Okay, because he says, for as the lightning comes out of the east and shines even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Okay. So in other words, Kim Clement claiming, oh, I'm not looking for the second coming of Christ. I'm just looking for his many different appearances. That means he's believing in a new age Christ that's going to appear as a supposed reincarnation of Christ. Like, in other words, well, every pope claims that they are the visible image of Jesus Christ on earth. So every pope can be considered a reincarnation of Christ. Okay. But here's the other thing about Kim Clement. He supposedly prophesied that Bill Gates was going to become a financial blessing to the Christian church. Yeah, right. And then he also prophesied that Pope Francis is a man of God. Okay. All this guy ever did was prophesy about political figures. He never prophesied anything that was about repentance or, things that our Messiah, talked about. It was all about political stuff. He even supposedly prophesied the Hurricane Katrina thing. And when it happened, everybody thought he was a legitimate prophet. But see, he knew about HARP because, I believe Kim Clement was a Jesuit, infiltrator, that he was sent to deceive people. Okay. Because he prophesied that Trump was going to serve a second term. Okay. And it hasn't happened yet. But when it does happen, everyone's going to think Kim Clement was a true prophet. But here's the thing. Kim Clement said that Trump, when he comes back in his second term, he's going to convert to Roman Catholicism and that he's going to make America into a Roman Catholic nation. Okay. So we can see what's going on. Okay. So here's another Jesuit Illuminati psychological operation. And I have to share this with you because this guy, who we've been seeing a lot lately suddenly he's appeared on the scene all over YouTube, all over social media. And his name is Bishop Mari Emmanuel. Okay. And he says a lot of stuff that resonates with people. Like, he talks about repentance and he talks about how America needs to repent. And he speaks out against Pope Francis because Pope Francis is condoning same-sex unions. So he says a lot of things that resonates with people. But what they don't know is that even though he says some stuff that sounds good, there's other things that he's saying that are really bad. Okay. So the reason I do not believe for 1 minute that this guy was attacked by this Muslim guy, or it was all staged, it was fake. And I'll tell you why. So stay with me. Here you see an image of Pope John Paul II walking with Ronald Reagan together. In 1981, these two became joined at the hip. I'm going to explain to you why. Okay. This Bishop Emmanuel did, this whole YouTube video called The Assumption of the Virgin Mary. In other words, the Catholic Church teaches that when our Messiah resurrected, she went up there with him, that she resurrected at the same time and went to heaven too with him. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe she was a woman of Yah. I believe we're all going to see her someday in the new millennium, that she is a holy woman of Yah. But everybody's body is in the grave until Ezekiel 37, where Ezekiel 37 talks about that our bodies are going to come out of the graves and we're going to be given new skin and new bones. But in the meantime, when we die, our spirit goes to heaven, our soul goes to heaven, but our body remains in the grave. So the idea that Mary bodily ascended to heaven, just like our Messiah bodily ascended to heaven, is a lie. But this is what the Catholic Church teaches. They call that the Assumption of the Virgin Mary. They teach that she bodily ascended to heaven. There's no biblical support for that. They deify her. Okay. Now, this guy has been very vocal about Donald Trump. He's actually said in some of his videos that if we don't vote for Trump, America will be destroyed. So what he's doing, he's using fear-mongering and saying that America will be destroyed if we don't vote for Trump. Okay. And so let me go ahead and explain what you see in this, okay, in this graphic that I made. So this guy worships a false Jesus and he preaches a false gospel that includes worshiping Mary as the Queen of Heaven. Okay, he's even said, I bow, I bow, I bow before you, Mary, Queen of Heaven. We heard him say it in a YouTube video. Okay, Bishop Maria Merola fake attack comes at an opportune time when Israel's being attacked by Iran and Donald Trump is being attacked by the left in court. That's what conservatives would like to think, that Trump is being attacked. You know, it's all staged to make him look like the poor, persecuted Messiah. So all of this is staged by the Illuminati to manipulate the emotions of Bible believers around the world and to cause people to be more agreeable to the one world religion of Antichrist. Ever since I was 14 years old, I read the true story of former Jesuit priest Alberto Rivera, who later became born again. Okay, there's Alberto, right? He was a Portuguese guy. And, you know, I started reading all these books when I was 14, 50 Years in the Church of Rome by Charles Chiniquy, who was a Native American guy who had become a Catholic priest, but he came out. He left the Catholic Church and he became born again. The Vatican Assassins by Eric John Phelps, The Secret History of the Jesuits by Edmund Paris, Double Cross, which is the story of Alberto, The Godfathers. You know, I've read all of these and I began to study about the agenda of the Vatican to bring everybody under a one world religion and a one world government. So Alberto revealed many things that he was briefed about when he was being trained in the Vatican as an assassin and a Jesuit spy. One of the things he shared is that the Vatican staged a fake assassination attempt of President Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul II in 1981. These fake assassination attempts were only a few months apart, but they were meant to bring America closer to becoming a Roman Catholic nation. The strategy behind these psyops, or what you would call a psychological operation, was to give the appearance that Reagan, who claimed to be a born-again Protestant evangelical, and Pope John Paul II had become best friends. Pope John Paul II was supposedly shot by a Muslim terrorist, and he survived. He was later seen on international television meeting with the Muslim terrorist in jail and granting him forgiveness and also absolving him of all his sins and the assassination attempt. Okay? And you can't absolve anybody of their sins. That person has to repent on their own. You can't decide, oh, I forgive you on your behalf, or I absolve you from all your sins. You know what I mean? You could forgive somebody, but they're still not cleansed until they repent. Okay? So this was meant to cause Muslims from around the world to convert to Roman Catholicism when they saw Pope John Paul II granting his Muslim attacker forgiveness. And it worked. The entire world watched as Muslims and people of other faiths all watched around the world, and they lauded Pope John Paul II as a born-again Christian pope. I remember at the time, I was a babe in the faith. I had just become born again, and there were people at my church saying, Pope John Paul II became he's a born-again Christian. I'm like, but how could he be if he prays to Mary? I used to say that to people. And they're like, well, he might be ignorant in that department. But God knows his heart. I'm like, I mean, I never bought into it. I was like, I just don't see how somebody could be a born again Christian and still be praying to saints and praying to the dead and praying to Mary. How's that even possible? That's like, oh, I'm an idolater, but I'm a born again Christian idolater. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Okay. Pope John Paul II and President Reagan were both interviewed simultaneously by the news media, and they were both giving the Virgin Mary the credit for saving them from the assassination attempts. At the same time, Nancy Reagan, President Reagan's wife, the First Lady, she erected a giant statue of Mary at the White House, and she began praying the rosary beads. Now, I read this on DuckDuckGo. I can't seem to find the story on Google. Okay, Google seems to, squash a lot of stories that you can't seem to find. Now, I know that DuckDuckGo was bought out by Google, but for some reason, there are still things I can find on DuckDuckGo that I cannot find on Google. Okay, but I did read the story on DuckDuckGo. And this statue of Mary was in a closet until just in recent years when President Trump was at the White House in 2016. He brought the statue of Mary out, from what I understand. That's what the news article claimed, that he found the statue of Mary from Reagan's administration and he brought it out in the open again. So I don't have any way to prove that to you. Okay. I just read it on DuckDuckGo. Okay. So the psychological operations are meant to manipulate the emotions of the people so that they will become more agreeable to the religion of Roman Catholicism and the push for the one world religion of the Vatican. Now, I go into more detail in this other blog called Is President Trump a Globalist? Now, this bishop named Maria Merola supposedly was assaulted by a Muslim, just like Pope John Paul II. And of course, he grants the guy forgiveness. And yet I see people all over social media claiming that Bishop Maria Merola is being led by the Holy Spirit. They're saying this because he has forgiven his Muslim attacker. The only problem is that Bishop Maria Merola is a worshiper of the false Catholic Virgin Mary. The reason I say that is because we know that the real mother of our Messiah, Miriam, she was a Hebrew. She was from the tribe of Judah. Okay? She was a woman of Yah. But they worship a false Catholic Mary, which I believe is really Satan. Because we are told in 2 Corinthians 11:14 that Satan transforms himself as an angel of light. So if you're going to worship another human being, guess who's going to step into that position and receive the worship? Satan, right? Because I'm not saying that our Messiah's mother, Miriam, is Satan. What I'm saying is the entity that they're praying to, they think they're praying to Mary, the mother of our Messiah, when in reality, Satan steps into that position and accepts all the worship. Okay? The real mother of our Messiah, named Miriam, she would never want us to deify her nor pray to her. We are commanded in Scripture not to pray to the dead, nor to statues, nor graven images. Exodus 20, verse 2 through 6. Deuteronomy 18:11 commands us not to have communication with the dead. This is called necromancy. In Jeremiah 7:18 and also in Jeremiah 44:25, we are warned not to worship the Queen of Heaven, which was an ancient pagan fertility goddess from Babylon. The Babylonians sacrificed infants to her every spring on, what they call Easter, Ishtar. They also dyed eggs in the blood of these infants. So you see, the Roman Catholic Church has conferred the identity of this false pagan goddess upon the true Hebrew mother of our Messiah, named Miriam, and they call her the Queen of Heaven. Okay? So here's a meme that somebody made. I borrowed it. Somebody on Facebook made it. It says, another deceiving Mary worshiper pretending to preach Christ. Avoid this agent of the Catholic cult at all costs. Maria Merola posts on Facebook. Join us for Holy Mass for the Queen of Heaven, our Holy Mother Mary. Mary, the Mother of Light and Life. Okay, this is without a doubt the mystery of lawlessness that Paul talked about in 2 Thessalonians 2:7. So the Vatican is publishing this fake story about Bishop Maria Merola on purpose to get people on board with this one world religion of the false Messiah, anti-Messiah. Bishop Maria Merola says Christianity does not make a distinction between good and bad. He actually said that in this video. He says if you are a Muslim, you cannot eat pork. But if you are a Christian, he says you can eat pork because in Christianity, there is no distinction between good and bad. Okay, he actually said that. He even lies and misquotes Leviticus 11 and says that pigs can be eaten because they are cloven-footed. But see, the Torah says that even though pigs are cloven-footed, they are still not clean because they do not chew the cud. Okay? Leviticus 11:7 says, and the swine, though he divide the hoof and be cloven-footed, yet he chews not the cud. He is unclean to you. Okay, so these are things that I've been posting on Facebook over the last couple of weeks, and I just wanted to kind of share them. So in light of the events that are taking place with Israel being attacked by Iran, I believe that Daniel chapters 7 and 8 are about to take place right before our eyes. I believe that we shall soon see the rise of the little horn, which is the United States of America under Donald Trump. Okay, now here's Daniel the prophet. He saw in his vision the he-goat attacking the ram. Now, in ancient times, the he-goat is Alexander the Great, who was the leader of the Grecian Empire, and he attacked Medo-Persia, which represents the ram. Okay? But in modern times, in Daniel 7, I believe that the he-goat is the United States of America. Starting with the two Bush presidents, they began attacking in the Gulf War and also in the Iraqi War and the Afghanistan War. So they were the ones that started attacking the ram, Medo-Persia. Okay? And I believe that they're doing this because it's part of the political Zionist agenda. They want to make Israel the epicenter for all the world religions. So that's what they're trying to do, is to make Israel or Jerusalem the epicenter for all the world religions. So the devil has his own agenda for Jerusalem, even though Yahuwah has a different agenda for Jerusalem. Now, I recommend this video. It's on YouTube. It's also a blog I wrote, The Little Horn Arises Out of America. Okay. And so here's the link to the video, to the blog, and then this is the link to the video. So can you imagine Trump returning to office just in time to defeat Iran on behalf of Israel? Or perhaps Trump will add an addendum to his Abraham Accords, adding Iran to the peace agreement, thereby seeming to be the man of sin. Okay, now I made this graphic back in October of 2023 when the Gaza war first started. This is from 1985. Trump was on the cover of Manhattan Inc. And it says Donald Trump's Ultimate Deal by Ron Rosenbaum. Okay. This magazine cover from 1985 features Donald Trump holding a dove as he tries to imitate the real Messiah, who was seen with a dove descending upon his head. The two-letter T's in Manhattan look like horns on his head, right? The caption near his head displays Donald Trump's ultimate deal. This was a hint about his future peace to prosperity agreement with Israel and the Palestinians, which was presented on January 28, 2020, but was rejected by both parties. I believe it's possible that Trump will broker a two-state solution, and that will kick off the building of the third temple. That's possible, okay? I believe that's entirely possible, okay? Now, the entire world is going to wander after the beast whose deadly political wound will be healed. That's what I believe is taking place with all these Trump indictments and court battles, right? Because look at this. In Revelation 13:14, it says the beast is healed. In other words, recovers from a deadly wound. The Greek word for wound means a plague, heavy affliction, public calamity. Now, he already was healed from the virus in October 2020. Supposedly, he and his family contracted it, and he bragged about it on Twitter, and his son Don Jr. bragged about it on Twitter, that he had such a robust immune system. And, even Don Jr., his son, said, yeah, he needs to go donate his blood, so that it can be used for, the shots, for research, for that. And so basically, I think they were hinting that it's even possible that his Merovingian bloodline, his DNA, are even embedded in those, DNA altering shots, And so the Greek word for wound means a plague, heavy affliction, public calamity. The word sword in Greek is makira. And guess what? One of the definitions says judicial punishment. Okay? The beast will recover after being arrested and indicted. Now, I made this graphic in September of 2022. Okay? But I just find it interesting that this is happening now, just like last year, right around the time of Passover. They're trying to make Trump look like the poor, persecuted Messiah. Okay? I believe Trump is the he-goat, just like Alexander the Great. And the Grecian Empire is like America is right now. In Daniel 8, the ram represents Medo-Persia, which is modern-day Iran. Right now, Donald Trump is being tried in court for his many indictments just in time for Passover again. It's just like last year during Passover when he was arrested, supposedly, for his many crimes, and it was intended to make him look like the persecuted Messiah. Well, I can see that now Trump may have subpoena power, whereas prior, all these Supreme Court judges shot the whole thing down when he said he wanted to bring all the election fraud evidence to the table. They shot him down and wouldn't let him do it. But now that he's on trial, he legally has subpoena power. So I believe it's entirely possible that he's going to bring out all this evidence that the 2020 election was stolen from him, right? And then it's possible even that he could step back in without an election. I'm not prophesying this. I'm just saying it's a possibility, right? And you see, I believe all of this has been fabricated by the Illuminati to propel Trump into power. So what wouldn't that be crazy if he comes back without an election? He would be just like the phoenix who rises from the ashes. And I don't think it's even an accident that the election fraud results were being counted where? Phoenix, Arizona, of all places. Now, take a look at this. This is a screenshot that I took, and it's from this parade that was in 2019. They displayed a giant, colossal image of Trump at this parade in Italy. And you can see he's wearing the wreath around his head like Nero Caesar. And on his chest, he's got the mythical bird called the phoenix. Okay. And I believe that's probably what this is too. I don't know. It might be either an eagle, but I think it looks like a phoenix to me. But also, you've got the head of Nero Caesar right here on his shoulder. And then you've got the flag of communism, which is the axe and the sickle and the star. Okay. And then, of course, you got the all seeing eye of Horus or Lucifer. All this imagery was on this statue that they were parading. Okay. So is it possible that Trump is the phoenix who will soon rise from the ashes? I believe that's a possibility. I'm not saying it as a prophecy. I don't know for sure, but I see it as a strong possibility. But get this. You know that Josephus, the Jewish historian, said that Passover is to begin in the month of Aries the ram. Well, guess what? The Iranians commandeered a ship called Aries the ram. So the timing of this is impeccable. Okay. Will Damascus appear in the headlines in days to come? Will Damascus come to an end? Well, we don't know yet, but it seems like Yahuwah is definitely causing these events to line up exactly as they are written in the scriptures. And I want you guys to have your eyes opened and not be deceived by this guy who is, saying America needs to repent. He's rebuking Pope Francis for condoning same sex unions. He makes it sound like he's on the side of morality, but now he's preaching other things that are anti-Torah, such as eating pork and praying to the Virgin Mary and worshiping her. So he could end up being the biblical false prophet. I don't know for sure, but he definitely looks like he could be fitting into the biblical false prophet who would help to propel Trump back into power. So be aware of what's going on. I don't want any of you to be deceived, okay? So that's the end of this teaching today. And we'll take questions.
The first question is, what are the reasons for speaking in tongues? Is it wrong if you don't have an interpretation?
No, it's only wrong if you're going to speak in tongues out loud in the assembly in front of everybody.
Meaning you're prophesying, not just that someone can't hear you as you're praying, maybe collaboratively in a group, but you're praying under your own breath.
Right. There's two different purposes for prayer.
So show the scripture.
Okay, I will. Okay. So there's two different purposes for praying in tongues, for speaking in tongues. Paul talked about praying in the spirit. When you see, praying in tongues, okay, pray tongues. I can find it. Pray. He says, I will pray with the spirit and I will pray with my understanding. Okay. Okay. He says, for if I pray in an unknown tongue, my spirit prays, but my understanding is unfruitful. So when we pray in tongues, our mind doesn't understand what's being said, but we're edifying our spirit, right? He says, what is it then? I will pray with the spirit and I will pray with the understanding. I will sing with the Spirit, and I will sing with the understanding. So praying in tongues is not the same thing as delivering a prophetic utterance to the assembly.
In tongues.
In tongues, right. So let me find 1 Corinthians 12, where Paul actually outlines the gifts of the Spirit. 1 Corinthians 12. He says, now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. You know that you were Gentiles carried away unto these dumb idols, even as you were led. Wherefore I give you to understand that no man speaking by the Spirit of Elohim calls Yahushua accursed, and that no man can say that Yahushua is Yahuwah, but by the Ruach HaKodesh. Now I want to show you this because the word Lord in Greek is kurios. There's 3 different Greek words in the New Testament for Lord. Sometimes it's the word despotes, and sometimes it's the word oikodespotes. If it's either of those 2 words, it's talking about a ruler of a household or a landlord, a guy that owns land and you're renting from him, right? But if it's this word kurios, it's supreme in authority. It means, Elohim. Okay, it's the master. So it's really supposed to be Yod He Wahe. Okay, Yod He Wahe. So he says, no man speaking by the Ruach of Elohim calls Yahushua accursed. And no man can say that Yahushua is Yod He Wahe, but by the Ruach HaKodesh. In other words, it's the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, that gives you the revelation that he is Yahuwah come in the flesh. Now there are diversities of gifts, but the same Ruach. And there are differences of administrations, but the same Yahuwah. And there are diversities of operations, but it is the same Elohim which works all in all. But the manifestation of the Ruach is given to every man to profit with all. For to one is given the Spirit by the Spirit the word of wisdom, to another the word of knowledge. So there's 1. Word of knowledge is 2 by the same Spirit. To another faith. So faith is a gift by the same Spirit. That's the 3rd gift. To another, the gifts of healing by the same Spirit. So that's number 4. To another, the working of miracles. That's 5. To another, prophecy. That's 6. To another, discerning of spirits. That's 7. To another, different kinds of tongues. In other words, the ability to speak in other languages, earthly languages, that is, right? And then to another, the interpretation of tongues. That's number 9. So if you are going to give a prophetic utterance, the gift of prophecy in tongues, okay, then you also should be the one to interpret what you just said in tongues. Because that's happened to me before, where I gave a prophetic utterance to a congregation. This was like back when I was still in the church. I had a prophetic utterance. The Holy Spirit would come upon me and I would feel his presence, and it felt like heat all over my body, like this overwhelming heat, this overwhelming like warm oil being poured all over you. And I knew he wanted me to prophesy, right? So I would give the utterance in tongues, and then I would wait to see if somebody else had the interpretation. And every time I did this, somebody else had the interpretation. But there was one time when nobody had the interpretation, so I ended up giving the interpretation myself in English, in the language that everybody understood. So it's not that it's like a sin per se, but it's like if you're going to give a prophetic word in tongues, Paul says, pray that you may also interpret. So if you're also going to give if you're going to give a prophetic utterance in tongues, he says, pray that you may interpret. Okay? So because he says right here, he says, wherefore let him that speaks in an unknown tongue pray that he may interpret. Now, in my experience, when I pray in tongues in my privacy of my own house, and I'm not giving a prophetic utterance to anybody, I'm just pacing back and forth in my living room and I'm praying in tongues.
You pray in and out of tongues. You pray in English, you pray in tongues, you go back to English.
Right. It's like, I pray in tongues for a while, and then it's like the Holy Spirit takes over the prayer, and all of a sudden I'm praying what He wants me to pray, and I'm worshiping and saying, Father, I love you, I praise you, I worship you, Yahuwah, you're holy. Thank you, Yahushua, that you died for me, that you sent your Son to die in our place. Thank you, Father. And you pray in tongues for a little bit, and then you're worshiping, and then you're praying in tongues for a little bit, and then you're worshiping, and it's this ongoing thing until there's this breakthrough, and suddenly the prayer changes, and now it's no longer me wrestling like Jacob was wrestling. Now all of a sudden it's like the prayer becomes easy and light, and now it's like the Ruach HaKodesh has taken over the prayer, and He's the one doing all the praying, and you're like, wow, I would have never thought to pray like this before. And it's not you, because He's giving you all these words to pray that are coming out of your mouth, and I'm like, wow, I would have never thought to pray like this.
Yeah, it's not your own wisdom. It's not something that was on your own mind. It's not even your own personality to ask for things or to pray in that way.
Yeah, and then like all of a sudden He starts telling you, pray for this person, pray for that person, and all these people start to flood your mind, and you're praying for different people, and then later you call that person and say, I was praying for you today. Oh, really? I'm so glad to hear that, because I was asking Father, for this, and this, and this, and it's like, and it confirms what you were praying about. So anyway, that's what praying in tongues is. It's not just to give a prophetic utterance to the assembly. It's to build up your spirit. It's to edify your spirit,
Yeah. So this individual, they're agreement with a lot of things, but they're saying if you're not giving an interpretation, or I should say, if there's not an interpretation for it, then it's a sin. They're saying that
But
flat
see,
out.
when you pray in tongues and then you pray with your understanding, that is the interpretation. That's what Paul meant when he says, I will pray with the Spirit and I will pray with the understanding. So I pray in tongues, then I'm praying in English. So when I'm praying in English, that's the interpretation of what I just prayed in tongues. And I do this thing, where you're moving in and out. It's like you pray in tongues, you pray in English.
Paul says if you speak in tongues, you should also ask that He give you the gift of interpretation. So that means you're capable of praying in tongues without initially having that gift of interpretation.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So that's interesting. So
yeah.
I'm just telling the person I think they're being a little harsh just because that's not their understanding. It doesn't flat out say, if you're speaking in tongues, you better have someone to interpret or else you're sinning. And that's kind of what they're saying. Or they're saying if you're speaking in tongues when you're praying in your private life, it's pretty much just gibberish to God. It's
What
crazy.
people don't understand is that the gift of tongues is actually the Hebrew language, but it's encrypted so the devil can't understand what's being said. So let me show this to you. In Isaiah 28, the whole thing is written to Ephraim, and he's judging Ephraim, okay? And what does he say? He says, for with stammering lips and another tongue will he speak to this people. Now let's look at this in Hebrew. Stammering lips, stammering, la'eg. It means a buffoon, also a foreigner, a mocker, stammering, okay? Lips, safa, language, okay? But now let's look at the root word. Stammering, 3934, right? Let's look at 3934, and we're going to find the root word, okay? Because a lot of times you'll find out more when you look at the root word.
So I think it's wise if when you're speaking in tongues, certainly in front of a group, that you would want there to be interpretation. You would hope that the body as a whole is operating in the gifts enough and in a healthy way that Yahuwah would use someone to give interpretation, if not yourself after the fact, if you truly have an understanding of what it is, Yahuwah is putting upon you, impressing upon you. But that's like the best method of operation. It doesn't say it's a sin.
Yeah. So 3934, it comes from this word 3932, right? 3932, la'ag, it means to speak unintelligibly. So tongues is supposed to sound like gibberish, because what Yahuwah was doing on the day of Shavuot in Acts 2 is he was restoring us back to the one pure language, which, in Genesis 11, it says the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. But he purposely confounded their language to prevent Nimrod's kingdom from becoming too powerful at that time. It wasn't time yet for the New World Order. So now on Acts chapter 11, he was actually unscrambling. He was unscrambling the confusing languages. And what he's doing, he's given us the ability to understand the heavenly language, because Paul says it's the language of angels. He says, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am nothing. So he makes a distinction. He says, for he that speaks in an unknown tongue speaks not unto men, but unto Elohim, for no man understands him. Howbeit in the spirit he speaks mysteries. So praying in tongues is not intended for mankind. It's not intended to be understood until the Holy Spirit gives the interpretation, right? So he that speaks in an unknown tongue speaks unto Elohim. For he that prophesies speaks unto men to edification and exhortation and comfort. But he that speaks in an unknown tongue edifies himself. But he that prophesies edifies the assembly. And then he says, I would that you all spoke with tongues. So Paul's like, I would like to see all of you speak in tongues, but rather that you prophesied. For greater is he that prophesies than he that speaks with tongues, except he interprets, that the assembly may receive edifying. So what he's saying is, I would rather see you prophesy in the known language of the congregation. So in our case, it would be English, right? So he would say, I would rather see you prophesy in English than to prophesy in tongues, unless you're going to get the interpretation. If you get the interpretation, great. But if you're not going to have the interpretation, then nobody's going to be edified.
So it's kind of like saying, which is what I just said. It's kind of like saying, look, amongst the brethren, this is wisdom. This is best practice.
Yeah.
What if you spoke in tongues because the Holy Spirit urged you, and the person who has the interpretation, they're afraid and they choose not to speak?
Yeah, exactly.
Who's sinning?
Yeah.
You sinning because you obeyed, or them sinning because they didn't obey?
Exactly.
I'd say it's a sin because they didn't obey, and that doesn't mean you're sinning because they didn't do their part.
That's why Paul says, pray that you may also interpret.
Right.
Which is something I've done before. I've prayed and I've given a prophetic utterance to the whole assembly, and nobody came forth with the interpretation. So I gave the interpretation, So he says, now, brethren, if I come unto you speaking with tongues, what shall I profit you, except I speak to you by either revelation or by knowledge or by prophesying or by doctrine? Okay. So,
and the revelation could come as a direct result of the tongues that you just spoke.
That's right. So, yeah, I've had it happen to me because I've been praying in tongues since 1981. I mean, I've had the gift for a very, very long time, and I've had a lot of experience with this gift. So there's been times where, I've just prayed in tongues by myself, and then the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, gives me the interpretation. I write it down in a journal, and, he'll give me the interpretation of what I just spoke,
Yep. Okay. That was just one question that just happened to spontaneously come up in the YouTube chat as you were finishing up. Anybody in Zoom having a comment or a question?
Hey guys, long time no see. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom to you, brother. Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, so this was really good, especially about, I really enjoyed the 7 assemblies and the meaning of the names
Yeah.
of the 7. I never heard that before, first time, have
Mhm.
read about the 7 assemblies and,
Mhm.
knew about the order and knew about what was told to each assembly, but never about the names. So that was,
So, Mark, this is another one of those things where, Maria's blogging and writing and studying. And in the midst of that, it just occurs to her, I wonder if there's a link between, these 7 assemblies and these 7 feasts on the menorah. I wonder, and so she looks into it. Sure enough, boom. That's not her
yeah,
own brain. That's Yahuwah.
Exactly.
yeah,
He's like,
that's
I get these
revelation.
ideas and think, you know, Gary's like, you're just more curious than me.
It's funny, it's ironic that, from studying the book of Revelation, you get the revelation, you know.
Exactly, and it's true.
And then John did say that there's special blessing
Yes.
for the reader of this book. So yeah.
Yeah, and
But
but go ahead.
but what I was saying is that what I was trying to say is that, I received this revelation, and I was watching, and we all know about Iran and, April 13th, and,
Mhm.
300 plus drones, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles. Um, but the revelation came, as the reports were coming in, they were talking about 99% were shot down, right?
Mhm.
Out of the total. Okay.
Mhm.
And I was praying about it. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And Yahuwah gave me something. He said, well, yeah, I will leave the 99 for the
I
one,
was just thinking that.
right?
I was just thinking
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
See, that's confirmation right there. Right there,
I was
Maria.
when
We're
you said
thinking.
that, I didn't even hear that because I went to bed, so I didn't even hear about the
But
99 got shot down. Yeah.
but so here's the revelation that I got about that, right? Was said 90, leave the 99 to get the one. The one is the 1/3 that will be saved in Israel.
Wow, that's
That's the
awesome.
that
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, oh my God, this is totally accurate. This makes sense. This is right.
Yeah.
And it's the 1/3 that's going to be saved, because look at this. 99% were shot down, okay, and the one, wherever that ended up, who knows? But that 1/3 is going to be saved.
Mhm.
And out of that whole total, he did save. He saved. Okay, so it totally adds up. I was like, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And I remember I was first watching this. I watched, just recently I've been turned on to this daily report.
Uh-huh.
It's called, the guy's name is John Stackelbeck.
Oh yeah, we know
He
who he is.
gives
Yeah, we listen to him sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of liked him because he gives live updates, and
Yeah.
he was giving live updates about Iran, and I was plugging in.
We only disagree with him as far as like the pre-trib rapture and that kind of stuff. But
Right, right,
other
right,
than
right,
that, yeah, but go
right.
ahead.
Yeah, but as far as his updates, he's given accurate,
Mm,
daily timely updates,
right.
which I use to get informed, about the latest
Right.
that's happening. And he's either on scene or he's off scene. I think he's there now, or he's talking with people that are actually there, right? He has contacts and connections that are there. So he's getting live information.
Uh-huh.
So um I was just, while I was watching it, it came to me. I was like, wow, okay, 99. And
Mhm.
then the one, okay, this is talking, this is related to the 1/3 that will be saved.
Mhm.
Um, but and then, other things came, like, okay, this latest push, this is the Gog and Magog.
Mhm.
Okay, it's talked about. This has got to be that, the northern war that will come,
Mhm.
it will come from the north. So it's just, it's it's really, really, breathtaking what's going on, and what the Father's revealing. If we ask, and I've been fasting and praying, and putting posts out about this, and I saw this post the other day, right?
What
And it
platform
just
are you talking about? Are you on Facebook?
no, LinkedIn.
Oh, LinkedIn. Okay. Yeah, I need to
I
get.
use LinkedIn.
Yeah, I need to get on there.
It's one of my preferred platforms. There's millions on it, and believe it or not, you guys, I've never had an issue with anything I posted on there. I mean, anything.
Wow.
COVID related, anything. I think that's just the favor of the Lord, right? That the favor of Yahuwah, where he's given me an open door that no man on there has shut. No man on there has shut. And I can just talk about whatever. So I just go to town.
I'm gonna
So
have to try. I'm gonna
one of
have
the
to go
latest,
there.
yeah, you should see some of my posts. But anyway, I just made a new one, right? Because I was really ticked off about what this doctor on there was saying. She was just going off. So I made a post. I didn't reply to her, but I made a post, and I was just talking about, um, she was saying, these white racists, supremacists, these Jews, this and that, these are all racist and all this hate and garbage. And, you know, I said, okay, um, wait a minute. I just wanna, if you don't mind, I wanna pull up that post that I
Yeah,
made,
that's fine.
because
That's fine.
so here's it. It says, "How have you treated your brother?"
Mhm.
And that's the title. And I said, um, I have seen over the last 4 years hate at all levels, government infighting over Dem Repub, vaccinated, unvaxxed, BLM, black, white, immigration, abortion, the latest with Israel. All of these issues have caused great division and hurt in our country at the expense of us all. Our title still says United States of America, but we are far from that. And the enemy of our souls, Satan, wants more of it. John 10:10, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. This is referring to Satan. He has definitely been disguised in many forms and fashions, manipulating his way into homes and hearts. What we have to do is fight the spiritual battle this way, because it is truly a spiritual battle. And the Bible tells us in Ephesians 6:12, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. There you have it. The enemy, Satan, has divided us on so many issues, and yes, it has worked. So what is the recipe to combat this? Look at Matthew 5:7. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. So we have ingredients to fight. Mercy, extend this to everyone. Pure in heart, this means you are filled with love. Remember this. The second greatest command, Matthew 22:39, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Blessed are the peacemakers. This is big. Remember that peace does not involve any judgment or condemnation. It simply follows after love. It has no conditions. Lastly, let me show you this picture painted in the book of Revelations. Revelation 7:9. After this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations, and kindreds, and tribes, and peoples, and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, having been clothed with white robes and palm branches in their hands. And then I respond, people, this is so powerful. What you are seeing is a picture of everyone on earth that believes in Messiah through faith and accepts that he died on the cross for their sins and confesses their sins shall be saved. All of these people from every nation and tongue, black, white, brown, red, yellow, and every other color, standing before the Lamb and worshiping together. Now tell me, if we can't get it right here and are calling each other out and saying this group is better than the other and this one deserves more than the other, how in the world are you going to make it to heaven with that attitude of hate and bitterness? There is
Exactly.
no way to enter into heaven with hate. No way. Now is the time to call upon Yahushua
Mm-hmm.
and ask for forgiveness for the way we have treated one another. Now, family,
Yes.
that's my point.
Yep.
And man, I felt the ruach just reading it right now.
That
Like,
is, yeah, that's just like Cain, the spirit of jealousy, the spirit of Cain. He murdered his brother because he wanted what he had. And Yahuwah already told him, you can have it. You just have to change your attitude. You know?
but Maria, these people, I mean, doctors of all people are coming out and saying this hate and this, they're spreading this word and just like, no way, not on my watch.
They're making it all about DNA and genealogy. It has nothing to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone can join Israel. A Muslim can
Yeah.
join Israel. All he has to do is repent, turn to Yahushua, and he is considered part of Israel.
And the other thing that she was saying, about these Palestinians, right? It's like these people need mercy. They need our support. They need this. They need that. Like, are you serious? These people attacked on October 7th.
It's not even the average citizen. The Palestinians and the Israelis live in harmony with each other. It's the government,
Right. And I mean, I'm like, don't you understand that word Palestinian comes from the word Philistine?
Philistines, yep.
Yeah, Philistines, right? And that word defined Philistine means sea invader, or people of the sea. What they did was they came in from the sea and they robbed the people on the coast. That's how they survived. That's where we get pirates from. So they were never, it was never their land.
Yep, I know.
I mean, there were Bedouins in the area. Yeah.
But Gary, I mean, like what they're putting out there, this, you've heard it, is all this propaganda.
Yep.
This whole propaganda message that, oh, this doesn't belong to them. They're not rightfully heirs. They're, they're committing genocide, and that's garbage, because genocide, whoever said anything during World War II when we dropped 2 nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Did anybody say anything about genocide then, about America? No. So when these people rightfully defend their land, okay, now we're talking about genocide. When they hesitated to invade Gaza, they gave them all this time in the world, and they wanted them to get out to go to Egypt, and Egypt said no, they can't come in.
Yeah.
They haven't committed genocide.
Yeah, this guy they call the Green Prince. I forgot his name now, but he was working for Israeli intelligence. They call him the son of Hamas because his father was the guy that was like,
He was working for the Mossad.
Yeah, no, he was, yeah. But he's now considered a born again Christian, I think. I mean, I don't know for sure what's going on with him, but he lives in California. And he's like basically saying, Hamas is evil, even though he was raised in Hamas. Like, he's basically saying, all the propaganda that they're spreading around about Hamas is false. He was captured by the Israelis, but he was actually treated better by the Israelis than by his own people. Because then when the Israelis let him out of prison and he went back to the Palestinians, they treated him way worse, Now, even though I agree with everything he has to say, I'm still a little bit like on the fence about him, because I'm like, he could end up being somebody that helps to push the Trump agenda, which I'm still waiting to see if he does that. If he does, then I'm going to be like, I don't know, But yeah, it's Mossab Hassan Youssef.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he'll tell you firsthand how badly these Palestinian people are treated by their own government. And even though I'm not saying the Israeli government is benign. I'm sure there's plenty of, bad people within the Israeli government, but he was treated much better by the Israelis than he was by his own government. People just don't even have a clue. They really don't, you know. It's just one of those nuanced subjects that you just can't assume everybody that's Jewish is fake and everybody that's Palestinian is good, and like each person is an individual.
You don't know who's come to Messiah. You don't know who's on the verge to coming to Messiah. They look like they're of Messiah, yet they're about to turn apostate. So you judge by their fruits in terms of making wise decisions, but ultimately it's up to Yahuwah. He's the one who judges, not us. So
yeah, thanks for sharing all that, Mark. That was really, really good, and I agree with you wholeheartedly that we are seeing the love of many growing cold, like our Messiah said. The love of many would wax cold in the last days.
Yeah, I heard this one more thing. I heard this, one of this pastor the other day. He was talking to me, and it was like telling me all this kind of stuff. Basically, the Jews rejected, Messiah, and then they rejected him Mount Sinai. Then they rejected him, at the cross, and he kind of sounded like what I've heard you teach before about, um, replacement theology. Like, hey, all these people are now saying, well, all these Christians are saying, well, they rejected him, so now we have him, and they don't matter anymore. That's what he was telling me. He was like, oh my God, and you've been a pastor for how long? And this is what you've been teaching?
Yeah, I mean, all of us can understand, like, all of us that are parents, we love our children, all of them equally, right? And even when you have a child that's gone astray and isn't living right, you are going to still love that child and pray for that child to repent. And, especially if you were estranged, like there's times when I've had disagreements with one of my sons about something theological. And when we're at odds with each other, it hurts me so bad that we're at odds with each other, that like my heart feels broken. And then when we make up, it's like, oh, I feel so much better that we've been able to come to an agreement here. It's like, you're never going to give up on your children. Even when they're in the wrong, you're never going to stop loving them. You're never going to give up on them. And even though you might have a disagreement with them, let somebody else come along and say something evil about one of your children, and the fangs are going to come out. You're not going to tolerate anybody saying anything evil about one of your children, right? You're allowed to discipline your own child. That's different. But let somebody else say something about your own child, and you're like not going to put up with that. You know what I'm saying?
And especially someone that was grafted in, and has lost their ability to be humble and now prideful.
Right.
I mean, what did Paul say? I mean, like, he gave the warning. Don't you dare get puffed up and act like you are something.
Exactly.
When her mistake allowed you to be part of the family. And man, that is prevalent. That is, I mean, it's just it's toxic right now, the way that
it really is.
that prevails. Like, wait a minute, you understand what you're saying? Like, do you not read? Did you not read what Paul said? Like, come on, man, oh God, I don't want to get started.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Yahuwah said to Abraham, your descendants. He says, "I will bless those that bless you, curse those that curse you." Right, and like in Genesis 12. This one guy on Facebook was trying to say, "Oh, he only meant that for Abraham, not for Israel." Right?
I wanted to ask a question. Hey, it's me, Vast Thinker from YouTube. I got a question on that. Okay, so Christ turns to the Pharisees and he says, "You synagogue of Satan, how can you escape hell?"
Mm-hmm.
Now, how does that apply to the Jewish people after Stephen was stoned? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like going, obviously, the Messianic Jews, they're uh, grafted back in
Mm-hmm.
as we, right?
Mm-hmm.
But bless the Jewish people after they crucified our Lord and Savior doesn't make any sense at all to me whatsoever. Can you explain how I'm wrong?
Okay, because he cursed that generation of people. But now it says, like, according to Ezekiel's prophecy, when he was told to lay on his right side and on his left side.
Is that 24? Which Ezekiel 20?
Yeah, let me show you. Okay, I'm gonna show something to you because a lot of people aren't aware of this. Okay, let me go all the way down to.
Thank you so much.
No problem, no problem. Where is it that Ezekiel was told to lay on his right side and his left side?
It just happens to be in this blog.
Yeah, it is. It's just me trying to find it. Here it is. Okay. So here is proof that Yahuwah divinely allowed the nation of Israel to be reborn in 1948, thus partially fulfilling the prophecy of Isaiah 66, 7 through 14. Because there's still more of it to be fulfilled when Messiah returns, right? So here I made this graphic. It says the fig tree began to blossom in 1948. Hosea 9:10 says, I found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. I saw your fathers as the first ripe in the fig tree at her first time. Song of Solomon 2:13 says, the fig tree puts forth her green figs, and the vines with the tender grape give a good smell. Arise, my love, my fair one, and come away. Then in Matthew 24:32, Yahushua says, now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass until all these things be fulfilled. So the generation that was around when Yahushua was here, he cursed that generation. He cursed the fig tree. Now, of course, he still had a remnant. He had Jewish apostles. A lot of his apostles, like Matthew, was a Levite. His apostles were Yehudim, Jews, right? But for the most part, as a nation, he cursed the fig tree. But in the end of days, he says he's going to give this fig tree a chance to come back to life again. And he says, this generation, meaning the generation that's born when Israel becomes a nation, he says, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Well, in Psalms 90, verse 10, we're told that a generation can be anywhere from 70 to 80 years. So if you add 80 years to 1948, that brings us to 2028. Now, let's look at this. This is Ezekiel was told to lay on his left side for Israel, and he was told to lay on his right side for the kingdom of Judah, right? So, true to prophecy, the people were taken. Well, let me start right here. Let me see. Yeah, let me start right here. But he also promised he would gather Israel out of all countries and will bring them back into their own land. That's Ezekiel 36:24. True to prophecy, the people were taken captive by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, in 606 BC. That's Daniel chapter 1. The Babylonian captivity lasted 70 years, as prophesied in Jeremiah 25:11, ending in 536 BC. That's Ezra 1. At the conclusion of the Babylonian captivity, 360 years remained out of the 430 years that were prophesied by Ezekiel. But Israel did not repent of her sins. Indeed, only 50,000 people returned at the end of the 70 years. That's in Ezra 2:64 through 65. Most of Israel chose not to return with Zerubbabel at that time. In Leviticus 26:18, Elohim warned that if Israel continued in sin after punishment, their punishment would be multiplied 7 times. When the remaining 360 years is multiplied by 7, the punishment extends to 2,520 years. Elohim's prophetic year is based on a 360-day year. That's in Genesis 7:11, Genesis 7:24, Genesis 8:5, Revelation 12:6, and Revelation 12:14 are examples of a 360-day year. 2,520 years of 360 days, which is a biblical year, is 907,200 days. Based on our Gregorian solar calendar of 365 days, this is 2,483 years, 9 months, and 21 days. Adding this period to the date of the decree of King Cyrus discussed in Ezra chapter 1, we come to the date of May 14th, 1948. Do not forget that there is no zero AD. Elohim's word and Jerusalem, June 7th, 1967. The exact same calculation can also apply to the captivity of Jerusalem. When the people were taken captive in 606 BC, the city of Jerusalem was not then destroyed. However, in 587 BC, Jerusalem was taken and the temple destroyed. That's in 2 Kings 25. 70 years later, in 517 BC, the temple was reconstructed. That's in Ezra 6:15. When we add 2,483 years, 9 months, and 21 days to this date, we come to June 7th, 1967. What is special about this date? June 7th, 1967 is the concluding day of the Six-Day War, in which Israel, for the first time since 517 BC, regained Jerusalem. So, as we can see, the dates of May 14th, 1948 and June 7th, 1967 are accurately calculated using the years that Ezekiel was told to lay on his right side for Judah and his left side for Israel. So we have proof that Yahuwah did restore the fig tree. Even though he originally cursed it when he was here, he said that the fig tree was going to blossom again. And he is allowing the fig tree to blossom again. And there is a remnant. In fact, this ministry that we like to listen to, they're called One for Israel Ministries, right? They have a YouTube channel.
Well, the last one they just did, the 9-minute video about Passover, awesome. So awesome.
They have, these people have tons of Jews coming to know Yahushua.
Arabs too,
yeah.
They have a whole Arab division for native Arab speakers.
Right. One for Israel Ministry. They're doing so much to spread the gospel in Israel. It's amazing.
That's that one that says Just Joseph. That's the one I just watched.
Yeah, we watched it. It was awesome. It was just absolutely awesome.
He's the president of the organization.
So they're speaking the word of Christ in the Bible when it's illegal in Jerusalem to do that as a Christian. Is that correct? Or am I incorrect in that understanding?
It's you're not supposed to proselytize. But it's amazing how many people are coming to Messiah, because today
That's awesome.
Yeah, today everyone has smartphones, and so it's I've been watching them for a few years, and they had a round table a few years ago, and they were talking about even in the Hasidic communities, right, in these rabbinical communities where they're not supposed to be on the internet and things. These people have phones, and so you have the young and the old who, in the privacy of their own home, in their own room, they're researching and they're looking up stuff about Messiah, and they're coming to Messiah, and they're writing to them privately saying, "I just found Messiah. Thank you for your ministry."
So awesome.
Yeah, it's just amazing.
Isaiah 53, right? Just drop it in their lap and go, "Here, there's a curse on this if you read it."
and they also
Sorry.
They also have a whole piece where it talks about you see that one where it says wrestling with God in the side? Right. It's a whole series where they have doctors, lawyers, politicians, I mean, you name it, people giving how they found Messiah. Mm-hmm. It's a great ministry.
And actually there is a ministry that, this was 8 years ago, they went around and they made all these Jewish people read Isaiah 53 out loud.
Awesome.
Because they didn't know it at all. everything in their readers where they say annually we read the cycle,
Mm-hmm.
they go around it, so no one reads it. So they're just opening the Bible and saying, "Hey, can you read Isaiah 53?"
And it's awesome because this is like they're filming all this, and there's all these Jewish people reading it, and he goes, "Who do you think that's talking about?" They go, "Well, it's Jesus." You know, it's like they know exactly who it's talking about. You know, it's
and you see them get choked up. Some of them are just like they're stunned. You know,
yeah.
It's so awesome.
There's so many people that don't know what's really going on. I have friends that live there, and there's this one guy. He's from Kenya. He's a black dude, and he used to be like so anti-Israel, anti-Jew, this, that, and the other. Now that he actually lives there and he's working up there, he's like, oh my goodness, these people treat me like I'm royalty. They lay out the red carpet for me. They're so hospitable, and you know, they welcome me with open arms. And he's like, there's so many people, even in the Orthodox community, that already believe in Yahushua as the Messiah, but they don't publicize it because they don't want to be ostracized from their community. But amongst themselves, they talk about it. He's like, you wouldn't believe how many of them didn't take the shot. So many of them they're accepting of Yahushua.
That one down below, they've got a whole series, and what's cool is these two, the guy on the right's from America initially, the guy on the left is native Hebrew, but they're both, Jewish, and they're both believers in Messiah and academics. And they use the Bible and they use the Talmud and the Mishnah to show how Yahushua is the Messiah. They sort of trip them up, and they show where they're being intellectually dishonest here, and they're going through and they're showing how even early Christianity actually caused. They have this whole thing called about how the early Christianity caused the oral laws to be written. And even a rabbi who's a doctor in linguistic studies has said it looks like the Talmud was written as a response to the first century Christians.
Mm-hmm.
Like we need to make a counter narrative.
Yeah,
really cool.
In fact, they even said a couple years ago they came out with a video. They showed that the Messianic Jewish Seder, there was no such thing as a Seder, a Passover Seder, until the Messianics, the believers in Messiah, came along.
At least there's no written record of it.
Right. Basically, the Messianic Seder for Passover was started by the believers in Messiah.
And the Jews copied the Seder and then put in their own stuff to point away from Messiah.
Yeah, what they did was they felt at that point, well, the Jews have a Seder, the Messianics have a Seder, so now we have to come up with our own. So then, of course, the non-Messianic Jews came up with the Seder that kind of counteracts the other one.
Because it was a threat, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, there's just so many things people don't know, and a lot of people are just kind of getting on the bandwagon of things they're hearing on social media. But there's always another side to the story, And that's why I just stick to the narrative of Scripture, because no matter what people say, oh, these are not the real Jews. And it's like, how do you know? Did you move there and do a DNA test on everybody that lives there? And even if you did do a DNA test, is that what determines who's a real Yehudi? No, Paul even said it's by circumcision of the heart. And that means being born again. If you're born again and you're Jewish, yeah, your heart's circumcised. So, when was it ever about pedigree? Never. It was never about pedigree.
Only in terms of the qualifications to be the Messiah. Who is the Messiah?
Exactly.
Or who could be a Levite.
Yeah. So there's so much of this. That's why Paul says, don't give heed to endless genealogies. Why did he say that? Because people were being puffed up and prideful about their pedigree, like I have the right pedigree, it has nothing to do with that. It's always been about faith. You know what I mean?
Yep. He says right. He's muted again. He says right.
Sorry, I'm back. Now, we've got Passover on Monday.
Yeah.
And they're going to sacrifice 1 or 4 and are they going to try to trick, or are they going to play a game whereby they use Iran, which I don't think Iran's dumb enough to fall for their tricks, to send a missile over and flatten the dome of the rock there so they can put up their temple, even though I think we agreed last time that it was somewhere in the valley, right? The actual, because there's been like 10 civilizations in the Jerusalem area since the 70 AD destruction of the temple. So, and the temple was somewhere else.
We've seen evidence on both sides of the aisle with that argument, and it's hard to know for sure, but you know, some say it's the city of David, but then some people are saying that who was it that did that video that proved that the Temple Mount was the original site of the temple? Who was it?
Was it Israel My Channel? Or
Yeah, I was it Joseph Good or something? I'm trying to remember. Temple Mount original site.
I guess it doesn't really matter, right? They're going to sacrifice how many on Monday? And
what do you
as
mean?
far
Are you
as I
talking
can-
about red heifers? Or are you talking about
yeah,
lamb?
the heifer. Sorry,
Yeah.
I see a red cow in my mind.
right.
Mhm.
How is that not a total affront to Christ's sacrifice? Like, how far after Christ's crucifixion was the end? Like, I mean, as soon as the veil ripped from top to bottom, did they continue with the sacrifice? I don't think so, but I'm not.
They actually did. In fact, there's actually
40 years.
It's in the Jewish Talmud. It's called the 40-year Yom Kippur miracle, where for 40 consecutive years, every time they tried to do the Yom Kippur sacrifice, it failed. Because like for 40 consecutive years, like the red ribbon is supposed to turn white. And if the red ribbon turns white, then that means the nation is forgiven of all their sins. But for those 40 consecutive years between 30 AD and 70 AD, the red ribbon didn't turn white. So they knew something's up here, right? The other thing was that the black stone came up every year for 40 consecutive years. So they knew something was going on, right? And I read this this guy named Ernest L. Martin. I read his, article about it. It's called they call it the 40-year Yom Kippur miracle. Well, it was a miracle showing them that they were guilty, right? It's the Yom Kippur 40-year miracle. And he says, we read in the Talmud, 40 years before the destruction of the temple, the western light went out, the crimson thread remained crimson, and the lot for Yahweh always came up in the left hand. They would close the gates of the temple by night and get up in the morning and find them wide open. So this was in Jacob Neusner, the Yerushalmi, page 156 through 57. So they knew they knew they were going to be judged. Okay. It says our rabbis taught during the last 40 years before the destruction of the temple, the lot for Yahuwah did not come up in the right hand, nor did the crimson colored strap become white, nor did the westernmost light shine, and the doors of the hekel or the temple would open by themselves. Okay, that's in the Sonsino version, Yoma 39b. So here's the thing that a lot of Christians and even Hebrew roots people do not understand, is that animal blood, even in the Old Testament, never took sins away. It never did. Okay. People have this idea that, oh, in the Old Testament, it was animal blood that took sins away. But now in the New Testament, it's the blood of Jesus that takes our sins away. No. He's always been the Lamb from the foundations of the world.
Yes, it was a typology.
Right.
The blood was to represent. The whole ceremonial system was supposed to represent Christ's coming.
Exactly.
Right. And it fulfilled its purpose. Like, if you want to continue to have a relationship with me, you need to do these things that makes us right for the time being.
Right.
But ultimately, it was just like a delay in a decision or a ruling.
Right. So even in Hebrews 10:4 through 6, it says, for it is not possible that the blood of bulls and goats should take away sins. Wherefore, when he comes into the world, he says, sacrifice and offering you would not, but a body have you prepared me. In burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin, you have had no pleasure. So the thing people don't understand, and a lot of people, will get upset when I say this, but Messiah is going to continue the animal sacrifices when he comes back, because they will be a memorial of him, not meant to take away sins, because they never did take away sins. They're only going to be there as a way of teaching. It's going to be used as a teaching tool to teach us.
Where now? Here?
No. I'm talking about in the new millennium when he comes back.
But there's no more death. How can you have sacrifice if it's all done away?
No. You're talking about the 8th millennium when the new heaven and the new earth comes down. That's after the 1,000 years, right? Okay, because look, let me show you this in Matthew chapter.
A lot of folks mix the two.
Yeah, they get those two confused. Okay.
Easy to do.
So right here, he says, "Think not that I am come to destroy the Torah." The word law is Torah, which means instruction, right? Or the prophets. I'm not come to destroy, but to fulfill. Now, the word fulfill, plerou, if you look that up in the Greek, it actually means to fully furnish, to make the law of Moses to be obeyed, to cause the law of Moses to be obeyed as it should be. That's what it means.
So you're talking about the ordinances that were done away with. You're suggesting that
Wait a minute.
Years,
What was done away with? Please tell me what was done away with.
I thought the ordinances of Moses that were put in the side of the ark, and I have a question about the ark for you in a second, was done away with at the crucifixion of Christ. Now we keep the feasts, but all those ordinances, all those laws, and not including the Zohar. Anyways, go ahead.
No, okay. So people misunderstand when he says blotting out the handwriting of ordinances. Okay, that word dogma means a man-made law, right? That was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross. What he's talking about there is that the Sanhedrin made up a rule that any of these returning tribes that wanted to come back into the land, they wanted to come to the temple and learn about the Torah, they were forbidden from coming into the temple. In fact, they would be stoned to death if they came near, right? And that's why that's what he's talking about. The handwriting of ordinances wasn't talking about the law of Moses. Okay, because right here, look at what he's
not the 10 Commandments. The ordinances were from Moses, were they not?
Which you talking about the Levitical system? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, the Old Testament. Weren't they given by Moses? God gave it to Moses to give to them. They were the feasts and everything.
Yeah, but listen to what our Messiah said. "For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass." Well, heaven and earth is still here. Is that correct? It's still here. He says one jot, that word jot, iota, is like a little tiny speck, like a little punctuation mark. Or one tittle, right? "Shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled." So
the 10 Commandments always apply. They've never been removed.
No, he's talking about the whole law of Moses, which is from Genesis to Deuteronomy, right? So when does the law of Moses, when does it pass away?
Were the ordinances of the sacrifice in those, was the sacrifices in the ordinances?
Yes.
So, okay.
So how did they not get put away?
Because the only reason why they stopped doing them, please understand, is that Yahushua fulfilled the pattern of the red heifer. Okay, because what does the red heifer do? Whenever the whole nation becomes guilty of shedding innocent blood, it says atonement for unsolved murders. Okay, when the whole nation becomes guilty of shedding innocent blood, the priests are supposed to use the ashes of a heifer to cleanse the nation of having shed innocent blood, right? So the morning that they shouted, "Crucify him," the whole nation became guilty of innocent blood.
And he even asked them, what should I do?
Right.
Barabbas or Messiah?
Right.
"Let his blood be upon us," they said.
Yeah, let his blood be upon us. So in Numbers chapter 19, it tells us that the red heifer is to be escorted outside the camp. Okay. It says that he shall be afterward he shall come into the camp. So where does it say outside the camp? I can't remember. It's in here somewhere. But he's to be the red heifer was to be escorted outside the camp.
Referencing Christ.
Yeah. So he was escorted outside the camp. Okay, here it is. Without the camp. Okay. You shall give her unto Eleazar. Now, Eleazar means helper, which is the same meaning of the Holy Spirit. So Eleazar is like a picture of the Holy Spirit. Eleazar the priest, that he may bring her forth without the camp, and one shall slay her before his face. Now, even though it's a female, all the animal sacrifices that were part of Abraham's covenant, he fulfilled every one of them in one fell swoop. And a lot of people have a hard time seeing this, but I've got a blog about Daniel's 70th week where I go into fine detail about how he fulfilled all of Abraham's sacrifices in one fell swoop. So pay attention to this, okay?
Agreed.
So Abraham was told, let's see, a 3-year-old heifer, and also a she-goat, Yom Kippur, because Yom Kippur she-goat represents those who went into exile, right? Yahushua was sent by the Holy Spirit into the wilderness to portray the Yom Kippur goat of, he portrayed both goats at his baptism. When he went underwater, he was portraying the sacrificial goat that was going to die, because baptism is a symbol of death. Paul said that we are baptized into his death, right? When he was sent by the Holy Spirit into the wilderness, he was portraying the scapegoat that gets sent away. The ram is the substitute offering for Isaac, the firstborn son. And this is the reason why during Passover, we're supposed to be able to see the constellation of the ram over Jerusalem during the month of Passover. Okay, so all these sacrifices were fulfilled by Messiah in one fell swoop, but that doesn't mean that we don't memorialize them. It's like when a married couple gets married. Do we go, oh, well, now we're married, let's throw away the videotape, let's throw away the photo album, we don't need this anymore. No, he wants us to always remember. That's why he said, do this in remembrance of me. So why is he going to rebuild the tabernacle of David that has fallen down? And what did David do in the tabernacle? David, who was from the tribe of Judah, not Levi, offered sacrifices. Okay, so he's going to do them as a teaching tool. Like, remember when I told you to kill the red heifer? That was me. That was a prophetic picture of me. You didn't see it. You didn't understand it. But now I'm going to teach you what that was all about.
Why would we need that understanding in heaven, though? I don't understand.
Because we're not going to be in heaven for the first 1,000 years. We're going to be down here ruling and reigning on earth.
That's where we differ, right? I believe when we go to meet Christ in the air, there's a 7 or 6-day journey to heaven, or possibly even shorter. And we're in heaven for 1,000 years where the books are open and there's no one to tempt, because 2 are in the field, 2 are at the mill. When Christ returns, one is taken, the other fellow falls down dead. So the devil has no one to tempt. And we're in heaven and the books are open and you get to see what's going on and what for, why certain people are there.
No, it says that we shall rule with him for 1,000 years on earth. Okay,
Where does it say that? Where does it say that? I don't know. I know we'll be with him for the 1,000 years, but I don't know where it is. And I'd like to know how you know that.
Okay, hang on a minute. Rain.
And there's no rush. We've got a lot of stuff and we can always do this next time too, right?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if there's any consequences to the red heifers for us. Like, would God find it a condemnation or an insult or a slap in the face now after the veil's been ripped from top to bottom?
No, I don't think the red heifer is a prophetic picture of Messiah. That's all it is.
But we already know who Messiah is.
They don't.
Well, yeah, they don't.
They don't.
Yes, I agree. So, but there won't be a consequence for them. That's like, are they honoring God by doing that or dishonoring him?
I believe they're honoring him because they're doing exactly what he commands us to do. But at the same time, he's like, okay, that generation back when I was here the first time, they rejected me. But this generation, I'm giving them another shot at seeing me in the temple ordinances.
Which, again, when you see the growth of those coming to Messiah in Israel, and it's the Israelis preaching to Israelis. It's not missionaries, right? It's their own people are saying, look, we found the Messiah.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
It is. It's beautiful. Plus, you have the the Dead Sea starting to come back to life. You have all kinds of crazy things happening, almost like Yahuwah's saying, "Hey, I'm making you prosperous again. I want to see if you'll bear fruit, and the real fruit is going to be Messiah." And in terms of the heaven and the earth, haven't passed away yet. So if they want to rebuild a temple, which there's no sin in wanting to rebuild the temple, right? They're trying to get close to Yahuwah. They're trying to do it the right way. So even though they don't know the Messiah, their motives are righteous. Now, if you're talking about Zionists,
in a misdirected way, right? Because
they don't know what they don't know, right?
1 Thessalonians 3:17, you are now the temple of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, but that's only one aspect of it. It's not like that's the end all be all. There's still going to be a literal temple, because look at what it says in Revelation 11. It says in Revelation 11, "And there was given me a reed unto like unto a rod, and the angel stood saying, Rise and measure the temple of Elohim and the altar and them that worship therein." So what do we have there? The angel's told to measure the temple, the altar, and the people inside the temple. Okay, so this isn't some spiritual thing. He's talking about the literal temple. He says, "But the court which is without the temple, leave out and measure it not. For it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they trample underfoot 42 months." Now, but I wanted to show you this. Now, Revelation 5:10, "And he has made us unto our Elohim kings and priests, and we shall reign on the earth." Okay. Revelation 17:18, "And the woman which saw..."
Reign on the earth when? It doesn't say when.
During the 1,000-year reign. Okay. It says we shall rule and reign on the earth with him for 1,000 years. Right here. It says, "She brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to Elohim and to his throne." So first we go to heaven for only 7 days. We're only going to be gone for 7 days. That's how long a Hebrew wedding lasts for. Jacob and Leah's wedding lasted for 7 days. Samson's wedding feast lasted for 7 days.
So you're suggesting the supper of the Lamb is only 7 days, and then there's a return. Interesting.
It's not the supper of the Lamb. There's two different things. There's the honeymoon. This is how they did it in ancient Hebrew weddings. The bride and groom would go away in the huppah, the wedding huppah.
I've been to a Jewish wedding, yeah.
Yeah. And they would consummate for 7 days. Then they would come back to the home of the bride's family, and they will have a wedding feast with all the guests, right? So I talked about that earlier in the previous podcast, where he gave the Jews a chance to come, this Jewish Sanhedrin, and they didn't want to come to the marriage. So then he sends out people to come to the marriage, and he says, "Go into the highways and the byways and find whoever will come." So the wedding will be furnished with guests from those in the nations.
Yes, and we are the 7 wise virgins, I pray.
Yeah,
Right.
but yeah, we're going to be ruling on the earth with him. He even says the meek shall inherit the earth.
So when the Bible says after the 1,000 years, they're resurrected again, right? Onto the second judgment, where all the works of men, the devil, and all the lost are burnt to ashes. Like the whole surface of the earth is destroyed, and everything is remade in 21 and 22. How are we on the earth when that happens? When Jerusalem is hovering over, the New Jerusalem is hovering over, he hasn't touched the Mount of Olives yet, right? He hasn't.
So if we're in our incorruptible bodies, that even the fire only cleanses and purifies those who are in incorruptible bodies, but it will destroy everything that's corruptible. So if we're in an incorruptible body, we're not going to be destroyed by the fire. You know what I mean?
Can we back up real fast? So we have trumpets, right? It's a feast, and there's a reason why we're looking at the feast, because the feast helps us to be aware that something's going to happen in the future. And at some point we go, hey, that's when the harpazo happens, right?
Yeah, we believe it's a post-trib rapture.
Catching up, yep. Yeah, we talked about that last time. The harpazo. What's fun?
We get the harpazo, we're caught up, we meet him in the air, we're in the heaven for 7 days. We come back on atonement, and atonement is also basically where the bad guys get slammed, and we're the bride with him, and we're slain with our husband, right? and doing that thing. So we're already in the new bodies. Then there's the bride who's here, who's meeting at the Mount of Olives, which is at the same event, and they're recognizing him as they're the unwise virgins, recognizing, oh my gosh, we had this wrong, you know. And Maria thinks, I don't really have an opinion on it, that they'll probably stay in their natural bodies while the wise virgins are going to be still in their supernatural.
Yeah, I mean, if they miss
bodies.
the harpazo to heaven, then I can't see them getting an incorruptible body. It's only those who get taken up to heaven that get a heavenly body.
So we have the ruling and reigning for 1,000 years.
Right.
And there'll be people that are be born and have kids and marry amongst those in the earth. Right. We know that Egypt will not get rain for 3 years because they refuse to come and celebrate the feasts as a nation. Right. So that's evidence that there are still blessings and curses that come from obedience, but there won't be a deceiver. Right. He'll be locked away in the pit. So then at the end of that time, I don't know if there's going to be people who die like in their natural bodies who die, or if they're all going to be like sort of like Adam and Eve, where for the 1,000 years people don't die. I don't know. Right. But
everyone that's not going to heaven dies at the second coming. I don't believe in the rapture. Sorry. And just like I was talking about before, the quote,
you don't believe we're going to be caught up to meet him in the air?
Oh, absolutely. But remember the statement I was saying before about 2 were in the field, 2 were at the middle.
Yeah.
One was taken, 1 was left. That's the second coming, where the people, one person is saved and the other person is not. The other person that isn't saved, in my opinion, falls down dead. And then we go to meet Christ in the air. Everybody who is in Christ, right? And we go to be with him forever or wherever. Let me translate that.
What happens to the 1,000 years where before Earth is destroyed?
Well, yeah.
Who is going to be marrying and giving in marriage and having
1,000
children?
years, we're taken to heaven, in my opinion, from my understanding, where the devil, and that's the revelational text where I don't have the number. The devil is here for 1,000 years and has no one to tempt. I don't know what that text is.
But it doesn't say that.
He's thrown into the pit. He's
sorry, at the second coming, he's thrown into the figurative pit where he is trapped here on earth with no one to tempt. That was my understanding.
Okay. So that's an interpretation, right? Gotcha. But so I'm just trying to paint the picture according to what you said. I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything like that. So
you're awesome.
If the bride is with Yahuwah in heaven for 1,000 years, and there's no flesh on earth because those who weren't taken were destroyed, killed.
Yep.
During the 1,000 years, those first 3 years of the 1,000 years, how is Egypt not getting rain for 3 years because they don't come to celebrate the feasts?
Yeah.
I don't know, because that's Old Testament, and I'm not sure the application of that understanding.
Okay.
That might apply to that historical point, but you guys are awesome, so I'll listen and see what you're saying.
Okay.
So during the 1,000 years, it says from one new moon to the other.
Isaiah 66.
Yeah, all flesh shall come and worship before me, right? So this is talking about the 1,000-year reign, but we know that in the 8th millennium, when the new heaven and the new earth comes down, there'll be no more sun, and there'll be no more moon, and there'll be no more seas. Okay? So, you're familiar with the Feast of Tabernacles, right? Feast of Tabernacles? Have you ever kept the Feast of Tabernacles? Have you ever celebrated it?
I don't recall. No, I don't think so. Not knowingly. Maybe at church we did it, and I didn't know.
It's a week long, so
the prophetic shadow pictures that we learn from the Feast of Tabernacles is that for 7 days, this is in the fall feasts, right? He says for 7 days that we are to dwell in tents. Okay, so he says...
Yeah, I remember that. Yep,
Yep. For 7 days, we're supposed to dwell in tents. But then on the 8th day, we no longer dwell in tents. Okay, so the 8th day is a holy convocation. It's a celebration, but we're not dwelling in tents anymore. The reason being is that the 7 days of the Feast of Tabernacles represents the 7,000 years from the creation all the way up until the 1,000-year reign of Messiah on earth is finished. Then the 8th day correlates to the 8th millennium, when the new heaven and the new earth comes down here. And at that point, we will be tabernacling with him forever in eternity. But heaven will be down here at that point. Okay. So we know that according to, Revelation 19, after the 1,000 years are finished, Satan is brought up from the bottomless pit and he's given another chance to deceive the nations. Okay.
Who are the nations that he's deceiving if the planet is empty?
Right. Because
you're missing Revelation, the second resurrection, right? They're dead somewhere at the second resurrection. They're raised again for judgment, on to judgment. But the devils haven't been thrown into the lake of fire, so they're still stuck here with no one to tempt. But that's my interpretation. But these are side issues. We're all on the same side, so no worries.
Yeah, I mean,
It's okay.
says
We're just
right here
iron sharpening iron.
that the devil is bound for 1,000 years and cast into the bottomless pit and shut up, and he sets a seal upon him that he should no more deceive the nations until the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. Okay, and after that he must be loosed for a little season. And then it says, and I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given them, and I saw the souls of them.
Okay, whoa, you're going way. Now, the 1,000 years, and then you understand Revelation, the second resurrection, right? You want to be in the first resurrection,
right,
or change in the twinkling of an eye. After the 1,000 years, there's the second resurrection. Understand? Yes,
yeah,
no?
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
All right, so those people were dead at the second coming of Christ. They, as I said again, the one fell, or one was taken, one was grinding at the mill, one was taken, one was left behind, right? So, yeah.
So in my blog that I have called Taken or Left, okay, I've got a blog.
Whoa, awesome. You're awesome. You like done so much work. Show yourself approved with spades or aces, or you've done so much amazing work.
So, okay, I have a blog called Taken or Left, Remember Lot's Wife. So,
guys, we can always catch up. I've got 5 more minutes, and then I've got to run. What did you want to say as a okay, go ahead. And then your closing things for me. I don't know.
I used to think that the foolish virgins were lost forever, but I no longer think that. I believe the foolish virgins are told to go buy the oil, and they do. During the 10 days of tribulation, you remember Smyrna has to suffer tribulation for 10 days, right? In Revelation 2:10, they are told that they have to suffer tribulation for 10 days. So during those 10 days, they go and they buy the oil of his name. Now, how do we know?
As soon as you do it, that doesn't make sense though with a wedding though. Like when a wedding is done and the 5 virgin with their second bottle, they're saying, I'm not selling you my second bottle of oil. They all go into the Holy of Holies and the door is closed. You're not getting in. How the heck are you getting in?
No. Okay.
As a dumb virgin after that, it doesn't matter how many days or 10 days like you're interpreting. When that door is sealed, when you go into the Holy of Holies, it's over. Like anybody that's outside, including that little area outside the Holy of Holies, that's it. You've been asked to leave, go get more oil. They're going to close the doors. You're not getting back in.
So what's the point of buying? What's the point of buying oil if they're doomed? Okay, so the point is, like, look at this. Song of Solomon says, because of the savor of your good ointments, your name is as ointment poured forth. Therefore do the virgins love you. So the name is the oil. The oil is the name. That's why Philadelphia is told they have an open door that no man can shut, because he says, you've not denied my name. Therefore you have the open door. But Smyrna, he says they have good works. He says, good job, you've got good works. But he never mentions anything about them knowing him by name. So he tells them they have to suffer tribulation for 10 days. Now, why 10 days? Because there's 10 days between the Feast of Trumpets and the Day of Atonement. So what I see is that those belonging to the wise virgin group, the Philadelphia group, they're like Leah, because Leah got married first. She's the firstborn daughter. Remember, Jacob wanted Leah, but he ended up getting tricked by Laban to marry Leah. And the night he marries Leah, he goes, why did you trick me? He says, fulfill the week with Leah first, and then I'll let you have Rachel. So Leah represents the wise virgins who have the oil of his name. And then at the end of the week with Leah, he was also able to take Rachel as well, even though he agreed to work yet another 7 years for Rachel. So he actually took both brides within the same 14 days back to back.
Is that correct, though? Like, they made a contract and that was broken. Now, we know that Jacob was a trickster, a liar, a cheat, and a thief, and he deserved kind of stuff like that. But when you make a contract in a wedding like that, and then you switch the brides, that's illegal. I mean, like, why would you even oh, okay, fine, I'll wait another 7 years. As someone who works, I'm not going to wait another 7 years for the deal that I made. Right? That's just
he got to marry her at the end of the week.
Yeah, he
after 14 years. For the first one, and then he had to work another 7 years to get the next one.
No,
didn't he?
He didn't have to wait 14 years to consummate with Rachel. He got both brides in the same 14 days, and then he agreed to work another 7.
14 days. So I got that wrong. So that's why I thought it was 14 years. Sorry.
It's both. It's both. So basically, Laban says, fulfill her week, and we will give you this also for the service which you shall serve with me yet 7 other years. And Jacob did so and fulfilled her week, and he gave him Rachel, his daughter, to wife also. So at the end of the week, he got Rachel.
Yeah, so 7 years of work for the promise. Then he gets the wrong wife. Then he says, okay, after your honeymoon's over, you can marry the second wife, who you were supposed to have in the first place. So then he marries her, finishes her honeymoon, but he's got to work an additional 7 years for the second wife that he got.
Right. So probably Jacob, I'm assuming Jacob probably knew, I'm getting what I deserve. I deceived my father, whatever. Maybe that's what he's thinking. And he loved Rachel so much, he's like, okay, whatever. I just want to get my wife at the end of the 7-day honeymoon with Leah, so I'll just go with it. So probably he thought, all I only have to do is consummate with Leah for 6 more days, and then I get to have my Rachel. That's probably what he's thinking.
But are you supposed to have 2 wives? Is that okay in the
No,
Old Testament?
No, it's not okay. No, it's not that it's okay.
Because the Mormons do all that stuff, and I just look at that and I'm like, no.
No, we're not in favor of it. What we're saying is, okay, the 2 houses of Israel, they were divided. The 2 kingdoms were divided after King Solomon died, right? Now, what caused the 2 kingdoms to be divided in the first place was Solomon's polygamy, because Solomon had so many wives, and he built heathen temples for these wives, and he was taxing the people very heavily and making them pay for these building projects with taxes. So what happened was, after Solomon died, his son, Rehoboam, he took over as the king, and King Jeroboam sent letters to him saying, look, we'll serve you on one condition. You'll lower our taxes. Well, King Rehoboam, Solomon's son, says, no, I'm going to make your taxes even heavier than my father did. So the 10 northern tribes went north, left the kingdom of Judah, and said, we're done. We're done with the kingdom of David. So ever since then, the 2 kingdoms were divided. You had the kingdom of Judah and you had the kingdom of Israel. So the 2 sisters that Jacob married, they're a prophetic picture of the 2 houses of Israel. And what caused them to be divided was polygamy, because Laban tricked Jacob into marrying both brides.
And even the animosity in the family of the 12 tribes themselves.
Right. So we're not saying it's okay. What we're saying is that the division between what caused the 2 kingdoms to be divided in the first place was polygamy, and it was wrong. But Yahuwah still used it nevertheless. He used it
for good.
You know what I'm saying? So my point is that Leah represents the Gentiles and the nations who received the gospel, because she was more abundant. She had way more children than Rachel did. Rachel represents the kingdom of Judah, because when the kids were, when King Herod killed all the baby boys under 2 years old, there was the prophecy repeated from Jeremiah, Rachel weeping for her children.
Rachel had the idols, the other one didn't.
Yeah, Rachel died young because she had those idols. So Rachel represents the 2 southern tribes of Judah and Benjamin, and Leah represents the 10 northern tribes, okay? So these 2 houses are going to come back together again. because it tells us right here in Ezekiel 37. So you wouldn't be able to put this together unless you understood the narrative of the two houses of Israel. Because we're told right here in Ezekiel 37 that first they come out of their graves and he puts new bones on them and new flesh on them. And they are an exceeding great army. Okay, well, what do you need an army for? To fight against the beast, right? Okay, he says, Son of man, these are the whole house of Israel. And then he says, take one stick and write upon it for Judah and for the children of Israel, his companions. Then take another stick and write upon it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel, his companions, and join them one to another into one stick, and they shall become one in my hand. Well, this word stick in Hebrew is tree. If you look up the word, it's tree. So it's two trees. Okay, that's who the two witnesses are. The two olive trees are the two houses of Israel. It's not just two individual people. He says, take one tree.
So how does the two witnesses apply? How does that understanding when they're dead in the streets of Israel for 3.5 days? How does that apply?
So what you have here is that he says two olive trees and two candlesticks. That's 4 objects. Wouldn't you agree that's 4 objects? So if it's 4 objects, right, how can he be describing 2 individuals, right? So what's the first time he ever described, okay, I talk about this in my blog called Who Are the Two Witnesses? And basically, let me find it. Who are the two witnesses? Now, I do believe there's going to be 2 individuals that will probably be the leaders of these 2 corporate groups, right? So what you have is the 2 southern tribes of Judah and Benjamin, and you got the 10 northern tribes of Ephraim and Joseph, right? And in Zechariah, Zechariah is asking the angel, what are these 2 trees? Who are these 2 trees? And basically, he's told these are the 2 anointed sons. Well, remember in Exodus, he says, Israel is my firstborn son. So he calls the whole nation his son, his corporate son. So when Ezekiel was shown that the 2 olive trees represent the 2 anointed sons, because that's what it says in Hebrew. If you read it in English, in the King James, it says 2 anointed ones, but the Hebrew says 2 anointed sons. Bain Yachar, okay, 2 anointed sons. So they become one new man. Remember, Paul said both Jews and Gentiles shall become one new man. Okay, so it's not 2 individual men that become one man. It's 2 groups of people, Jews and Gentiles, that become one new man. Now, like I said, I do believe there's probably going to be 2 individual men that head up the 2 groups. But I believe that there's going to be this worldwide revival that's going to be all over the world, but there will be a strong presence of them in Jerusalem. There will be a strong presence of these witnesses in Jerusalem that are going to be speaking out against the beast. And at the end of their ministry of 1,260 days, then they are killed and their bodies are laying in the streets. And the whole world sees their dead bodies resurrecting and going up into heaven. Okay?
Does it say bodies?
Yeah.
Because my interpretation was it was the Word of God and the Holy Spirit, which are both the witnesses, which were both the ones that brought down the plagues on Egypt, wrapped in sackcloth, right? You had the 2 witnesses.
Yeah, it says dead bodies right here. But see, here's the thing. You got to go by Scripture interprets Scripture. Would you not agree with that? Where's the first time that Israel's likened to an olive tree? It's in Jeremiah 11. Okay, so we go to Jeremiah 11:16. And what does he say? He says, I have likened Israel to a green olive tree. So every time you see something pertaining to an olive tree, it's Israel. Israel is an olive tree.
Who's the fig tree then?
The fig tree is Jerusalem, the capital city.
And when he walked by that fig tree and it didn't bear fruit, he cursed it.
That's right. That's Jerusalem, the capital city.
That generation.
Yeah, right. That generation. But he also said that the fig tree was going to blossom again in the future. So he did intend for Israel to be regenerated after their punishment was over. Remember, Ezekiel laid on his right side and his left side? That was fulfilled for both houses. And so he's allowing the fig tree to come back to life again, to blossom again since 1948. Okay. So, but the point is that, there's going to be a corporate group of people all over the world that represent these two witnesses. And there's going to be like an evangelistic outreach to the world with these people that carry the anointing of Moses and they carry the anointing of Elijah. In other words, those that operate in the gifts of the Spirit, and then there's those that obey the Torah. So the two groups are going to come together and form this powerhouse. And some of them will be in Jerusalem, but some of them will be scattered throughout the world, But the ones that are in Jerusalem, the beast will kill them, and their dead bodies will be laying in the streets. It says their dead bodies.
Yes, 3.5 days. And then everyone gets scared when they're resurrected. So how does the heifers on Monday apply to this promotion? We're going to have a temple, and then we're going to have the Antichrist in the temple. And then who knows what kind of nanotechnology he'll have to show everyone.
Well, we're not going to see the Antichrist yet. It's like what's going to happen is first he's going to build the temple, and then he's going to take away the daily sacrifice.
Okay, so they're going to do that for that they can make that temple. They've got everything ready, and they can put the temple together in less than 6 months.
Oh,
right?
I know. Yes, I've been talking about that for years. Yeah, I've been talking about this since 1981. So the red heifer ordinance is a prophetic picture of Messiah. So I think it's great that they're doing it because for those who have eyes to see, we recognize, that's a picture of Messiah. He had to be escorted outside the camp in order to cleanse the altar because they disqualified themselves when they shouted, "Crucify him." So the only way that the Passover lamb can even be acceptable to the Father in heaven is if they apply the ashes of the heifer to the altar. So he thought of everything. He wasn't only the Passover lamb, he was also the red heifer. So that's why he had to be escorted outside the camp. And not only that, Joseph of Arimathea donated his brand new tomb in which never a dead body had been laid. Well, it says in Numbers that the red heifer ashes have to be collected into a brand new place, a clean place that had never been used before. So there you've got the prophetic picture of the ashes of the heifer being placed in a brand new container. Joseph of Arimathea's tomb. So the point being is, it's that the fact that they're doing this is good on a positive note for the fact that it's prophetic of Messiah. But for those who think that the ashes of the heifer is what's really cleansing us, I don't think anybody who understands Torah really believes that it's the animal blood that takes sins away. It's only a prophetic picture. That's all it is.
Yeah. That reminds me of the question I was going to ask you. Since you understand that all the blood and all the ashes were only a depiction and a representation, when Christ was crucified and we had the earthquake and the crack happened, what is your opinion? You believe in Ron Wyatt and the
Yes, okay. I do.
Right,
I love Ron Wyatt.
Okay,
yes.
That's cool.
Yes, I love Ron Wyatt. I totally believe in Ron Wyatt's findings, and definitely, absolutely, I love Ron Wyatt. Yeah. So
do I.
But we believe that that Yahushua is we're going to rule and reign with him, just like the whole thing with the ark, right? The ark was lifted up from the earth. In fact, the waters caused the ark to be lifted up from the earth, and all the people that were below drowned, right? But then after the waters receded, the ark came back down, right? It's the same thing with those who get taken into the marriage. We're only going to be gone during those 10 days of awe, which is the 7 days of the wedding are inside the 10 days of awe. And then the bride comes back as his army. We're going to be fighting against the beast with him. And it says we're going to rule and reign with him for 1,000 years. And that's why he says we're going to be called kings and priests, because we shall be kings and priests on the earth. Okay. It says, and has made us unto our Elohim kings and priests, and we shall reign on the earth. So we're going to be ruling and reigning with him for 1,000 years on earth. And at the end of those 1,000 years, that's when the new heaven and the new earth comes down here. Okay, so for the first heaven and the first earth will be passed away. So all during the 1,000 years, we're going to see Yahushua in the tabernacle of Ezekiel, just like Ezekiel's tabernacle. It says that the prince will offer sacrifices and oblations. So the prince is Messiah. He's the one that's going to be doing these, but only as a memorial, not as if, oh, these sacrifices take sins away. They don't. They never did. In fact, the ones that they do on a daily basis, the morning and the evening sacrifices, those are just to provide the food for the priest to eat, and it's an act of worship. It's like if a bunch of pastors, Christian pastors, got together and went deer hunting, and they shot a deer, and then they cleaned up the deer and they roasted it over a big fire pit. Then they get in a circle and they pray and they thank Yah for the deer meat. Is that a sin?
And I don't even
Of course not.
I don't even think the morning and the evening sacrifices, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think those sacrifices even are meat. I think it's bread, dough, and oil.
No, it's animals.
I didn't think so.
If it's just bread and oil, they call it an oblation. But if it's a sacrifice, it's a blood sacrifice.
Okay.
So it was meant to be like an act of worship, and then the priest got to eat of those sacrifices. So it has nothing to do with sin. But a lot of people are confused, and they think all animal sacrifice has to do with atonement for sin. No, it's just once a year on Yom Kippur. That's the only sacrifice that was really done for sin. Even the Passover lamb was just meant to redeem the firstborn.
And here's something most people don't think of, is they think that the priests at the temple were there all the time, but they had a rotation. And so they lived surrounding the city, but that wasn't their home. They went and served for 3 weeks at a time, kind of like our Army reserves. So the sacrifices that came in daily, weekly, while they were on duty, they had a portion that was burned up, completely, but that was only a portion of what was given by the people, and that was to feed the people on staff.
Right.
So really, if you look at it in terms of a wasteful kind of thing, very little of it was wasted.
Right.
And I really hate to use that word, but because we shouldn't consider it a waste, something that was given to Yahuwah. But for those who have a hard time with animals were killed and they're just burning,
Yeah.
it was
So
food.
So I mean, I believe that we're going to be going to heaven for 7 days that replicates Leah and Jacob's 7-day wedding.
I'll see you there for the 7 days. But I got to go.
Gotcha.
I wanted to wish you all the best. You guys are awesome. I just want
Thanks.
to pray for you. Heavenly Father, bless my brother and sister here and everyone in the chat, everyone on YouTube, Lord. Help us to have the eyes to see and be kind to others. Lord, forgive us for our trespasses and just bless everyone in Christ Jesus. Thanks, guys. You guys are awesome.
Thank you so
Keep
much.
up the good work. You give me so much to think about. I'll be praying about that all the, and whenever I can, I'll come by and see you. Bless
Okay.
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Shalom,
Thank you
shalom.
so
All
much.
right,
Bye-bye.
Shabbat shalom, everyone. Shavua Tov. For those keeping Pesach, I hope you're all keeping Pesach.
Yes.
Have a
Monday
good-
at sundown.
Have a good Pesach. And remember, the 15th day is the no work day. The 14th day, while you will have already eaten your Passover lamb, it is the preparation day. So that's not the day you have to worry about not working. It's the 15th.
Right.
That's the high day. Shabbat shalom, you guys. Take
All right.
care.
Shalom.
And bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yahuwah bless you and keep you. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you shalom. We hope you've enjoyed today's broadcast and that you are encouraged in your walk with Messiah. For more teachings, subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell to be notified of our latest content. Visit Maria's many blogs at doubleportioninheritance.com. That's doubleportioninheritance.com. This ministry is made possible by the prayers and support of listeners like you. To make a donation by PayPal or Venmo.com, use the email address doubleportioninheritance@gmail.com. That's doubleportioninheritance@gmail.com. On behalf of Maria and Gary at Double Portion Inheritance Ministries, may Yahuwah bless you.